Commission meeting 2022. It is 6:30 p.m. We will begin tonight's meeting with a roll call.
Commissioners Lazar?
Here.
Brazen? Foster?
Here.
Eckfors?
Here.
Boswick? Here. Polika?
Here.
Showalter?
Here.
And Chair Baker.
Here, I have not heard from Commissioner Brazen about being absent, so I do expect that she'll be here, unless, has our staff heard anything different? Nope. Okay, then I'll expect Deb to join us shortly. We've got quorum. Yeah, we've got 7.
For the deck?
We're going to move up old business.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? Commissioner Brazen's calling me. One moment. Never mind. We'll move next to approval of the agenda. Item number 2. Sorry about that. We'll get a status update from Commissioner Brazen. She is on her way. So item number 2, approval of the agenda. I think we've got a couple of changes to the agenda tonight.
Through the chair, if I may, I move to move old business to number 5 above the public hearing, as requested by the applicant, and to remove 9A, the Plan Ferndale update, as member of the steering committee for the Plan Ferndale update. I am willing to give an update of our progress so far, but there's not a very big one, but I would like to do a more formal update at the next meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
I don't know why it's so loud.
You're being assertive, Dustin.
I know, sorry about that.
That was perfect. So that was a motion by Commissioner Foster with a second by Commissioner Hagfors to move old business item 6 to the new item number 5 that will come now before the public hearing, and to strike item number 9A that will be on the agenda for March. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Great. Motion passes. Thank you. Next, we will move to the approval of the minutes from the January 19th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. I know there's an edit from Commissioner Showalter.
Yes, and looking at which item it was, on page 13 of the minutes, it said I voted yes on it, and I was not at the meeting.
Are there any other edits or
Yes.
changes?
Just a
Oh,
second.
Deb's up
There,
the train.
I believe it's on the second page. Forgive me, I'm pulling it up here. Where there, so maybe the third page was the motion for recommended approval of the Parks and Rec plan, that there was no stated person who moved or seconded that motion.
Yeah, I believe it was a Parks Commissioner. As Chair Obert and I talked about that, and I think it was a Parks Commissioner who moved and seconded, but I'm sorry, I don't remember which one. Chair Obert might remember.
Right, and it might have been Valerie who seconded, but I don't remember who moved.
What should we do about that, City Clerk? Should we wait until our next meeting to accept the minutes and make sure we get the motion and seconder correct for the Parks Commission?
Bill, if you want to give me just a sec, I can see
Sure.
that.
We can do that.
I believe it was last one.
Not seeing it at the moment. If you would like to, I can find that information and just add it to the minutes when we do the amendment to Commissioner Showalter's name off where he goes.
Mr. Foster, are you comfortable with the clerk updating that after we accept the minutes, or would you rather they come back?
I don't think we need to come back.
Okay. So we've got the edit from Commissioner Showalter. There'll be an edit on the item that Commissioner Foster called out. Any other changes to the minutes from January 19th?
Seeing none, I would move to approve the minutes of January 19th, 2022, with the edits to pages 3 and 13 as discussed.
Walter, second.
Thank you. That is a motion from Commissioner Foster and a second from Commissioner Showalter to approve the minutes as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Thank you very much. The motion passes. Our next item, item number 4, is call to audience. If there is anyone here from the public who would like to address the Planning Commission on anything that is not on the agenda this evening, this would be the time to do it. Just a reminder, we do have a number of things on our agenda. The next item on our agenda will be what was item number 6 will now be number 5, consideration of site plan approval for 140 Vester Restaurant. There'll then be a public hearing, consideration of special land use application and site plan application for 180 Vester parking project. There are then 2 discussion items, 23250 Woodward Restaurant Concept and 915 East Drayton Ferndale Food Hall. So if there's anyone here to address the Planning Commission on items other than those that I just read off, please approach the podium, and you've got 3 minutes. All righty. Seeing no one approach, we will move on to new item 5. This is our old business item. This is consideration of the site plan approval for 140 Vester Restaurant Concept. We'll have an introduction from our city staff. We'll then welcome the applicant up to share any new information that they would like, and then we will take any questions or comments from the audience. Thanks, Kyle.
Good evening, commissioners. So this is a site that's been up here a few times before you. This is a 140 Vester. So this is located between Bermuda and Woodward. It is adjacent to the alley. It's across the street from a parking lot. It's behind the Elks. So this is a currently vacant glass shop. I believe it's been vacant for quite some time. It's a little bit irregularly shaped. So this site plan came before you at the January 19th meeting. Fairly similar to how it looks now. They did have some parking on the interior of the parking lot, and the parking alongside the alley was proposed to be removed at that time. There was a proposed masonry wall along the site, along the western alley line and along Vester. We fielded some comments from the public who felt that this wall was a bit harsh. It was right up against the alley, which is already narrow for cars and pedestrians. So prior to that meeting, we reached out to the applicant and asked, what are our options here? We looked at the ordinance and we saw that a hedgerow could be appropriate there. So we relayed that information to them. They came back at that 19th meeting with a pretty different plan. And I think the commission at that time was not ready to review it and approve it. So this is a plan that's very similar to what was shown at that meeting. So it features all the parking, the 8 spaces along the alley, to remain as they are now. So that would all remain existing. What they were able to do is add a substantial amount of landscaping to act as a buffer from that parking along the interior of the parking lot and up to Vester. So previously, they really had no landscaping. They're proposing to do payment in lieu, but now they're able to provide the trees that are required. They were able to provide the bicycle dimensional spacing. They've added some pavers to connect to the sidewalk here, and they're proposing to turn that entire area into additional outdoor seating area, which is permitted in the CBD zoning district. Zoom out a little bit. As a reminder, there is a proposed seating area down at the adjacent side of the building, and we do have our points of entry here, here, and here. So that is where we stand right now. Really, we try to beautify it. We try to add a lot of color and landscaping, removing a lot of blank asphalt and concrete up here at the front of the site along Vester. So at this time, I'd like to invite the applicant up just to have a brief discussion about this item, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Thanks, Kyle. Welcome back.
Welcome. Thank you for having us again. Thank you,
Yes,
Kyle.
thank you.
Good evening, everybody. So yes, per our last meeting, we updated the site plan. We add the landscape buffer to the existing parking spaces. We made the streetscape a little bit more presentable, to say the least. We have the pavers right there with the existing drive aisle. We took out the proposed parking in the interior of the lot, and we made that more of a seating area to kind of liven up that alley space while keeping the existing parking as well. Per some of the comments that were brought up last time as well, I think there was still a comment about the asphalt and how we're proposing to update that as well. And our proposal is to mill it down about 2 inches or so to get rid of some of those potholes and inconsistencies in the landscapes and re-asphalt, essentially.
Thank you.
Yep.
I know we've got the dimensions of those parking spaces now and how they relate to the alley, as well as to that former egress from Vester, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Cool. Is there anything else you guys wanted to add, or I can add? Okay, I'll see if there's any questions or comments from the audience on, this is the consideration of the site plan approval for 140 Vester, a restaurant. All right, in that case, I will turn to the commission. This applicant was with us at our last meeting. She sent back the information that we requested about the change that was proposed at the meeting. Anyone have any questions for our applicant or our staff? Or does anyone want to make a motion?
Through the chair, I have a couple questions. On the elevation, the site plan elevation document, you show the barrier, the wooden barrier, a little bit different than you do in the rendering. Just wondering which one you are going to be using. So the rendering has this horizontal look to it, and the site plan elevation has more of a lattice type.
Personally, I would go with the one that was shown in the rendering, but
That would be I would choose that as well.
Okay.
One in the rendering.
And that is only going to be in the very southern end of the property in that patio area by
Correct.
the garage door?
Mhm.
Okay. That's the only question that I have.
Okay, thanks,
Everything
Councilman.
else looks fantastic.
thank you.
Through the chair, just a quick
Sure,
clarification,
of
this
course,
may be for city staff. So on the rendering, you guys have the sign on the side of the building facing the alley. I know the sign ordinance requires that it's one sign per street frontage. Does the alley consider a street frontage?
Through the chair, yes, I do believe it is considered a street frontage.
Okay.
A lot of the language in the ordinance, when referring to parking and screening, it usually lumps alleys and right-of-ways and streets kind of into one concept.
Okay. All right, thank you.
There is also a condition in the motion that the applicant would submit for a sign permit, so I imagine that might come up too
All right, perfect.
during that process. Other questions or comments for the applicant this evening, or for our city staff, or a motion?
I move in the matter of 140 Vester, the Planning Commission approve the site plan based on plans dated and received January 28th, 2022, with the following findings and conditions. Findings 1 through 4 and conditions 1 and 2 listed in the staff report.
Support.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I was so excited that Commissioner Brazen was joining us. I missed that was a motion by Commissioner Azar. That was a support by Councilman Holiga. All right. Any discussion on that motion? And we'll have a roll call vote, please, City Clerk.
Commissioner Cesar,
Yes.
Brazen,
Abstain.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, this is on the site plan approval for 140 Vester, the restaurant concept, not the parking structure?
Oh,
Sorry,
sorry, I apologize to everyone for my lateness.
got stuck at the train.
It was, yeah.
So, all right, well, let's just take a quick
Less
second.
explanation needed.
Let's take a quick second then, and I'll just clarify for Commissioner Brazen. We moved item number 6, old business, up before the public hearing. So we've now considered the updated site plan that came in for the restaurant that we saw at our last meeting.
Okay, thank you.
So there's been a motion from Commissioner Azar and a second from Councilmember Pollaga to approve that restaurant concept as presented. They sent us everything we asked for at the last meeting.
Then I support.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Do you want to start the roll call over, Marnie, or have you got it? Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Azar?
Yes.
Commissioner Brazen?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Hagfors?
Yes.
Commissioner Husky? Yes. Councilman Polika?
Yes.
Commissioner Showalter?
Yes.
And Chair Baker?
Yes, thank you. That motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Welcome to Ferndale.
Yay. All right, Commissioner Brazen joined us at 6:46 PM, and we are now moving on to our public hearing. This is now item number 6A, consideration of the special land use application and site plan application at 180 Vester. This is a Vester parking project.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair Baker.
What did I miss?
Nothing, I did, and before I forget, I wanted to mention, so on the approval of the minutes, would it be possible that I make a new motion that we actually do table that, the minutes until, or can I make a new motion on that?
I don't know, but thankfully our city clerk is sitting here and can help me with this.
Put me on the spot.
Sorry.
I will actually have to check. I don't know off the top of my head. You should be able to revisit the motion because it's still in the same, within the same meeting.
I'm going to circle that and we'll come back to it when we get to our new business.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so our public hearing, again, this is the new item 6A, consideration of the special land use application and site plan application at 180 Vester, the Vester parking project. We will begin with an introduction from our city staff. We'll then invite the applicant to share any information that they have for us this evening. Then we will open the public hearing, which will be the time for anyone in attendance with questions or comments about the project to speak to the Planning Commission. After we close the public hearing, we'll work to answer those questions and address those comments, and then we will deliberate as a commission. So we will begin with Jordan. Welcome.
Thanks, Chair Baker, Planning Commissioners, members of the public. Good evening. I will start with just a high-level overview of the project, and then I'll kick it to the applicants. I believe we have folks from the development team in the audience to talk about the details of the project, but I will start at a high level. Essentially, what we're looking at here is the Ferndale collision site, and sorry, I'll try to speak more into the microphone here. So we're looking at the Ferndale collision site, 180 Vester, which is just down the block from the restaurant that you all just approved. And so this is right there at the corner of Vester and Bermuda. You could see in the site diagram here. Essentially, what you are looking at is a special land use and site plan application for a mixed-use parking deck that would be 161 spaces, 55 feet in height. And so the thing I'll highlight before I kick it to the developers to talk more of the details of the project, you'll note that there are several conditions that staff has put in there. As we have been working with this applicant who has been trying to get in front of the commission, there are a few items that we can work out at the administrative level that don't affect the massing, don't affect site circulation, and things like that. And so we felt comfortable bringing this to you this evening because the main elements of the special land use and the site plan have been figured out and they are there before you. What I'll do is I will just note, in the packet, you'll note that one of those conditions was that they had an elevation for 70 feet when the height maximum is 55. So we were not able to get that document in time for the publishing of the agenda, but we do have that. The planning commissioners were emailed it, but I wanted to let, for the folks at home, And when this project, if it does move forward, it'll get a project page. We'll put this online. But we do have the updated elevations, which are here. This would be 55 feet, and those 161 spaces would be across a 55-foot structure. And then there's, as required by ordinance, a mix of uses on the first floor. And so what I'll do is I'll open it to a rendering as I invite the applicants to come up and provide any details they would like to share about their application.
Hello, welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. This project features 8,700 square feet of retail space on the ground level, 5 or 6 stories of parking. The 5-story parking version has 61 spaces, while the 6-story version has 205 spaces. The design intent here was to essentially give the facade an impression of different segments in order to break up the typical facade of a parking structure, and be more compatible with the surrounding sites, especially in an urban downtown area like this site. We went through the review, and most of the items here we can discuss and address all but a few. So I guess I'm sure there's plenty of questions, and let's get started.
Yeah, if you want to start just by walking through maybe the updated drawings.
Sure.
Or the renderings, whatever you've got queued up. You can, it's your
Okay.
time. You can take it away. Jordan can help with the PDF if that's helpful. I know there's a lot of files there. So the parapet's at 55.
So this is the ground floor. Basically, we have 2 facades, both on Bermuda and on Vester of a storefront. The entry to the garage is on Bermuda, and 2 stair towers at either end. Because the site is rather challenging in that it's small. It's 150 feet by 111, 117. I can't read that. 131. Yeah, thank you. So a lot of the ramps are within obviously the operable tolerances, but they're steep. And the upper levels, you have ramps at 2 ends, the west end and the east end, parking along the perimeter and in the center. And basically that happens on levels 2, 3, 4, basically all the way up. Our previous version had a roof, which obviously created the 70-foot height.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to reduce it to 55. if we took off the sixth floor and the roof. The elevations, we're showing the majority of the elevation as masonry, and the ground floor would feature the storefronts. Some of the upper levels have glass as well, just as a kind of a part of the facade design. There are bands, sign bands that vary between masonry and metal. All materiality is in compliance with the ordinance, percentages and so forth. Do you want to? Should we go through the list here from the?
The materials list or the
Yes.
list? Yes, that would be great, please. I'm looking at, yes, I think I'm looking at the same document. Okay.
So, I'm sorry, you know what? Okay, I must have. Thank you very much. So on the north facade, the primary material is masonry. Actually, on all sides. The proposed is 93%, which is more than the 75% allowed. Secondary material is 7%. This is on the north facade. The south facade basically similar, 97 to 3, east 93 to 7%, west 100 because there's no metal. And then the upper floors same, 86. It varies between 83 and 87%, and the metal is between 13 and 14% within tolerances.
Okay. So I just noted 83 to 100% masonry.
Yeah.
Sort of the range? Okay, great.
Essentially, yeah. The there were discussions about, as part of the conditions, there were an area, open area requirement. I know that's something that we probably should discuss because the site is basically it's occupied by this entire structure. Very little of it is actually open. I believe right now we have a 3.7% open area, and I think the requirement's like 10. And then there's also mention of a 30-foot setback for parking. Well, obviously, in this case, the ground floor is mostly retail, and then the upper levels, of course, don't really meet. The other concerns were a number of EV spaces. Ultimately, we're going to comply with the ordinance as well as the ADA spaces. one thing that we don't show in our drawings is bicycle parking. We can show that on the exterior, and there's very little area on the interior right now, just because of all of the ramps being taking up most of the real estate, that and the retail. Photometric plan, landscape. Right away, parking dimensions. Parking dimensions, I think in the latest iteration, we show the dimensions of the parking spaces, 18 by 9, and then the width of the two-way lanes, 25 feet.
There, I found it. Are there any barrier-free spaces on the, I see 1, 2 van spaces. Oh, on each floor, I know what I see 4 now. Okay, so you've got them near the elevator.
Yes, that happens on
2, 3, and 4.
1, 2, 3, and 4. Yes.
I see now, thank you. Okay, so we've got barrier-free on here.
And then, obviously, we will ultimately provide a landscaping plan as well.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
I think what I'll do first is open the public hearing, and we'll see if there's any questions or comments from the audience.
Sure.
And then I'll have you come back up and we'll get some answers to questions from the audience, and then we'll take questions from the commission.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this is item number 6A, public hearing, consideration of the special land use application and site plan application at 180 Vester Street, the Vester Parking Project. If there is anyone here this evening to speak to the Planning Commission during this public hearing, please approach the podium. Please state your name and address for the record. And you have 3 minutes for questions or comments. We'll go through all the public comment first, and then I'll close the public hearing and we'll work to answer those questions. I will open the public hearing at 7:03 p.m. All right, I will close the public hearing at 7:03 p.m. And we will now move to questions, comments, and deliberation among the planning commissioners. Who would like to kick us off with either questions for our staff or our applicant? Commissioner Showalter.
Yes, I was looking at the architectural compatibility and design guidelines, section 24-184.
Okay.
And concrete masonry units are not permitted above basement or foundation walls.
In the CBD or broadly?
Just, it doesn't, I don't see an out for the CBD for that. It just says that masonry, which is brick, which is veneer masonry, which is brick, is allowed. Stone is allowed, terracotta is allowed, and that's what they list under masonry. But then underneath it says concrete masonry units, ground face, split face, burnished block are permitted for basement or foundation walls only and shall not be visible above the floor line of the ground floor.
All right, so 24-184, what section is that?
It's below the chart, item C.
E, thank you. C, existing set, oh, wait, hold on. 24-184. D1C.
Yes, it's D1C.
D1C, below the chart. Concrete masonry units, ground face, split face, burnished face are permitted for basement or foundation walls only, should not be visible above the floor line of the ground floor. So I guess I'll ask our city staff first. Put my glasses back on. Jordan or Kyle, in terms of Did this come up in the conversation about architectural compatibility?
That section didn't specifically come up, and Kyle, you can correct me if I'm wrong on the staff review, but our understanding was they were using all primary materials which were eligible. So I don't, that may be an area of the ordinance that has, there's occasionally we find some inconsistencies in language. That sounds like it might be one, and I apologize if I'm speaking out of turn there. But our understanding is this project is proposing all primary materials for its facade.
Okay, then I guess I'll have the applicant come up and
Yes.
talk to the materials specifically. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Showalter, I will let you do architect speak, please.
So when you say, so where, form-based zoning, it's still kind of new here, so there might be some things that don't quite work out between the form-based and the architectural compatibility, which is an older section.
Okay.
So did you, where did you, when you say primary materials, I don't know what you mean by primary materials.
The majority of the building is like a brick veneer, essentially. Not necessarily a CMU. I believe that's what was stated, right?
But when you look at the elevation, each of those modular units are 8 inches tall, which is a CMU unit. It's not a brick unit.
Well, it's a veneer. What I mean by it's a veneer. It's not a CMU in the true sense, where a full body is CMU.
Yeah, so as long as it's a brick veneer, then I don't have a problem. That meets the ordinance then.
Yeah.
So.
So even though it says block, it's a brick veneer unit that you're comfortable with, Commissioner?
Yeah, if it's brick veneer, I don't have a problem.
Okay.
It's a thin. It's a veneer. It's a block. You know what I mean? It's not a full.
Sounds good. Other questions for the applicant?
Nope.
Mr. Showalter? All right. Other commissioners?
Through the chair.
Mr. Hack first?
So I know you said currently there's no bike parking on the site, and is that something that you're working with the city on alleviating, or are you not going to provide the necessary bike parking?
We will. We're going to, because we can't really put it in the building, we'll put it on the outside. There's an 8-foot and a 10, it actually tapers from 8 feet to 10 feet on the east side. In that space, we'll probably be able to fit, there's ample space for
Okay.
bike parking, yeah.
Okay.
East elevation, which side is that? Is that like over here?
That is this one, yeah. And then, that one. So we can easily put some parking between the openings, the door openings, in front of the storefronts.
So in front of the retail spaces? Okay, thank you.
And then I like the addition of the glass panels kind of breaking up the monotony of a parking garage. My only question is there going to be some kind of a screening if cars are parked there so the headlights don't shine out from that area? Is there kind of like a screening, or are they kind of like a opaque panel, or how is that planned?
At the entrance and exit?
No, so your glass panels are up higher, how you broke up the facade and you have the different.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
How is that screened so that way headlights don't shine out through there? What's kind of the plan on that?
Our plan was to create walls to a height, and then of course the openings above that. So even where we have the spandrel glass here, behind it will be a little half wall, essentially.
Okay.
Of concrete. Yeah.
You mentioned that it's spandrel glass, so that's not going to be vision glass. You're not going to be able to see through it.
Spandrel at floor levels, wherever there's a floor level, but the rest of it will definitely let in light into the space, into the actual parking structure.
I'm not sure we allow.
So did I answer your question?
Yeah, just wanted to make sure. I wanted to see if it was going to be see-through or not, because spandrel, you can't see through spandrel.
Right. Just at the floor levels.
Ferndale House, I think.
All right, we're questioning the use of spandrel glass or non-transparent glass at the floor level.
I do believe that it's permitted in parking uses like this, because I think it came up at Ferndale House where they had something in a parking area that was spandrel glass, and I was like, you can't use that, and they were like, actually, it's totally in your ordinance.
I did just find it, so for parking deck design, which is subsection 7, and the architectural compatibility, says spandrel panels or opaque architectural wall systems, a minimum of 42 inches high, shall be required to screen view of parking cars and car headlights from the opposite side of the street. It doesn't indicate at which level.
Commissioner Hagfors, other questions at this time?
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions from the commission?
Through the chair?
Yep. Councilmember?
Couple things. I think this might actually be for Jordan. At one of the earlier meetings, we had talked about the possibility of using this location for downtown trash collection, recycling, all of that. But I don't see that in the rendering. Is there a reason why we didn't incorporate that?
So I
Or
can,
were you unaware of it because we were dealing with Justin back then?
let me pull up the floor plans, and then I will kick it to the applicant for some of the specifics, but I could show you generally where that is. Bear with me one moment.
It's trash for the interior, it's trash for the site, but we had talked about moving the downtown for that area where it's currently behind now Syndicate. We would actually move that into the parking structure, much like we have it with the dot, where businesses within the surrounding area are able to utilize that. The city would manage the trash, all of that.
Was that a conversation with the city council or between you and Justin?
No, I thought that was a conversation that we had here.
Oh, was it?
Councilman's actually right. I'm sorry, Chair Baker. Yes, through the chair, we approached Claire Dion after this came for discussion, so we are actively looking at opportunities. There's the Vester Flats project that was approved, but I know they're using a chute through the whole building. We will, if this were to be approved at the building permit phase, one of the reasons I wanted to pull up the floor plans is, I'll zoom in on this very quickly. So we learned a lot of lessons from the DOT, which by the way, when we tried to build a parking structure, there were a lot more public questions, so you guys are getting off a little easy. So
It was also public land and public money.
That's
so
true.
Please remember
But
that.
no, just had to crack a little joke there. But one of the reasons I wanted to pull up the floor plan is there are several areas for building services contemplated. A couple that are adjacent to right-of-way and the exterior of the property. We're going to work with the property owner, if this is approved, at the building permit level to see if we could take advantage of some of those opportunities, and we're going to have Claire involved in those conversations. We're actively looking at opportunities, both Vester Flats here, alley improvements that Vester Flats would make to the alley. We are exploring that. That's the short version. And if it's feasible, we'll try to incorporate that here, but we're not certain yet. We know some of the lessons we learned at the DOT. We're trying to plan for that space ahead of time at the permit phase and in the engineering phase, but we're also looking at parking, office, IT infrastructure, and everything else like that. So the shorter version is if we can seize an opportunity to do that here, we will. We just aren't at that level of detail yet in terms of the city's partnership potential with this project.
Okay. I'm glad we're still pursuing it. I was a little concerned because I just think it's a great opportunity to incorporate that into the structure.
I will say from a staff level, if it is physically feasible, we'll prioritize putting it in.
Excellent. Thank
Yes.
you.
And,
Sorry, go ahead. If you have something off of my question.
Oh, on trash?
Okay.
Councilmember?
So the second question I have, or maybe it's more of a request, is to the architect. For me, the colors are very cold. Given that Michigan is cold 9 months out of the year, I would encourage you to use warmer tones as opposed to grays. That's just my particular like and interest.
Is it because it's February, Councilmember?
It's always February, except when it's July.
I trust that architectural compatibility guidelines will be gone over with the staff particularly in relation to color compatibility? Okay.
Of course, yep.
And that's all I have. Otherwise, I think it's great. Actually, if I could continue. This was really what I was looking for in a design when this project first came up. I really wanted something that looked like an office type building, something that wasn't a parking structure. You know, we don't want a car jail in the middle of our downtown. So I think you did a really great job at hiding the fact that it's a car jail. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Councilman, Commissioner Showalter?
Yeah, looking at the plan with a little bit of a different eye, I know it's a conceptual plan, it's not quite there, but just watch out for you have some pretty big dead-end corridors there.
In terms of how the cars navigate?
Now, in terms of on the first floor, there's a big dead-end corridor that is accessing that first retail space, and it's against Michigan Building Code.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think,
This right here. It doesn't open in the direction of egress, and if this retail outlet's closed, they won't have access to it, so.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from the commission? Got a question about lighting.
I was going to bring up lighting as well. I have a couple of others, but we can
Go for it.
start with lighting. So, actually, maybe I'll start with my others, and then,
Sure.
since I wasn't necessarily involved in a lot of the discussions with the DOT, I think we have some
It's some learning.
feedback and from about lighting. But I'm going to actually start. So it was mentioned about the 30-foot setback for the parking. That is a first floor requirement that I believe it is met. Okay, sorry, I thought I must have just misunderstood when we were going through the opening there. So I just want to make sure that was cleared up, that is met. And we had pulled up the rendering, and it looks like that glass is reflective. Is that intended to be?
Semi-reflective, just to mitigate heat gain, essentially.
I don't know if
It'll just need to meet the percentage that's allowed, I guess, for the reflective. I don't know how standard versus retail frontage is regulated.
I'm not sure if we actually, I know that I've worked with ordinances in the past that are very specific to the type of glass that we can use. I'm not sure ours is, but I want to make,
Well, I think it is for the retail frontage, but I don't know about for the upstairs, because it's the structure can use the standard glass.
as long as it's meeting our requirements, I suppose that works. And I appreciate having the bike parking on the sidewalk, that it's, on the site. However, I think that as a parking facility, it'd be really great in our multimodal community that we would have indoor bicycle parking. And it does seem like there is quite a bit of space that we might be able to incorporate that somewhere. I know that it can be difficult with all the maybe utilities and spaces and retail spots that you might need to incorporate, but I would really prefer to see indoor bike parking. Is that a possibility?
For this site, because the parking the structure, the area, the footprint is rather small, a lot of it has to go into ramping. For instance, hold on, let me show you.
But it just seems like there is quite a bit of retail. I wasn't sure if, I don't also market retail space, so it would not be in my expertise to understand whether or not you can market a smaller retail space, but if that was a possibility.
Sure. So one option would be to inset the facade to allow for space that's covered, or actually there's a portion of the edge here that's covered with an awning.
Mm-hmm.
The other option would be we could probably design, a space to allow for it on the indoors, but it would take, obviously, it would, at the expense of retail.
Through the chair.
Yes.
It just seems like you have a lot of building services space. There's probably like a good 1,000 square feet of building services. I'm just wondering if maybe the space that's right behind the stairway on the north end of the building could actually just be utilized for parking, for bike parking.
Yeah, we can explore that. In my experience in the past, the building services area is never enough. So we'll play with that. I believe that it's possible.
And just to kind of push back a little bit on indoor bike parking. Indoor bike parking makes sense if it's like an apartment complex and it's for the residents. But if it's a public use of indoor bike parking, it gives people a place to hide to potentially steal bikes, because it won't be locked down with a key or anything. And so it will be, it could actually, I know I would feel a little bit uncomfortable parking my bike in an indoor spot that wasn't meant for people who had keyed access to the space.
Okay.
That's a good point, especially within the design, and if we're trying to maneuver into a space that doesn't have high visibility, it could certainly be an issue of security. So thank you for the comment. And so I would be certainly okay with if we were to incorporate something such as the applicant to work with city staff on incorporating indoor bike parking to the extent possible with the final site plan. It's not necessarily a requirement for me to vote yes on this project.
Be a part of condition 7, perhaps.
Not looking at it.
All right, I got it. You can go on to your next one.
And then that brings us to lighting. So one thing that we wanted to bring up and be very sensitive to, as we've learned from the dot development, is that lighting can be quite an issue on these types of structures, especially that we're integrating right into the neighborhood. And with the open roof parking, with the requirement that we have quite a bit of visibility in terms of light leakage into the public space. So we just want to make sure that you're very aware. I know that you'll be providing photometric plans to city staff for approval, but we want to make sure they're very sensitive to the issue. And since we're not reviewing them, I'm not sure there's...
Yeah, I was actually going to have a way more direct question to Jordan and to the applicant, if you know these details of what are the requirements for upper story security lighting on a parking structure, because one of the challenges with the structure on the west side is that it's an open upper floor like this one will be, and this 24-hour security lighting that is maybe 5 feet above the parapet is now shining into the backyards of everyone who's behind it, and you've got now a 4-story loft building right next to you, so you'd be kind of right in their windows. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about lighting on that top story in particular, what the requirements are and how you plan to address them.
I believe I don't recall quite honestly the requirements of the ordinance. I'll check that, but in general, we found that any light projecting away from the streets and in towards the inside of the building, the center of the building, typically does the trick. There's no, we don't have any light, like, we wouldn't shine light obviously onto the street. We would reflect it such that it would be concentrated to the interior rather than exterior. We direct it essentially.
Jordan, I wonder, could you address what the challenge was with the dot and why the city wasn't able to, with all best intentions about a photometric plan that doesn't leak off the site, what was it about security? It wasn't necessarily our ordinance that was requiring this lighting. Is there anything that you can share with us about what it is about parking structure lighting that resulted in this like UFO halo sort of thing happening?
Yes, and I apologize, I can't recall exactly off the top of my head. However, I do know it was related to some industry standards for lighting, so it was sort of outside of our ordinance.
Yes.
That being said, one of the things we are going to look at very closely when we review the photometric plan is we're going to look at the light spillage and minimize it, if not eliminate it entirely. We'll do the best we can on that, and we'll be diving into those standards proactively before fixtures are identified, because we know, while you have, the Vester Flats, which conceivably would be kitty corner across the street.
Right next door are the lofts.
Right.
Already,
So
pre-existing.
you have the lofts on 9, of course. So we'll be very sensitive to that, and we'll do our best to mitigate that. But again, I apologize, I don't know exactly off the top of my head what that standard was.
Do you have a sense of what the problem was at the dot and why the lighting requirements couldn't be addressed in a more satisfactory way? I'm just wondering if we're going to run into exactly the same issue when it comes to industry standards for security lighting.
Sure. It's plausible, but one of the challenges I will say with the dot is you have a lot of open air on the dot, and that was so that you would not have to put in costly ventilation, and we were trying to be energy conscious.
Okay.
And so when you have to have that open air, that creates just more opportunities for light pollution to spill out.
Okay.
That was a practical challenge we ran into. That wasn't the entire problem, but I know that was one of the drivers. So with this one, again, we haven't really gotten into the level of building detail, which, and Commissioner Showalter, thank you. We saw that corridor as well. We'll make sure in the building permit review that that's addressed. But when we get to that level of detail, those are the kind of things we'll crawl into at the administrative level and do whatever we can to eliminate any of that spillage.
I mean, for me, it's not even a do whatever we can, it's a we must. I mean, just given what has happened in the quality of life of neighbors near the dot, like, we can't have a fourth floor neighbor across the street at the lofts on 9 with these giant lights coming in their windows. So I'm not sure how to, in our conditions right now, it says final photometric plan shall be submitted with the final site plan. And while a photometric plan may meet our city ordinance, as we now know, there's this other layer of requirements related to parking structures. So just to the commission, I might work on, maybe a change to that condition number 1 that says something about containing the light on the site or, meeting industry standards without projecting lights off the site or something like that. I think it has to be almost higher than our standards.
Sure,
because of-
Baker, we'd
because of
support
what
that
we've learned.
at the staff level, absolutely, and we'll follow that direction.
I'm just worried you won't be here, so.
The staff that will be here will follow that
specific.
direction, and I think the condition is a great way to do that. Sure.
Okay, just a modification, but I also wanted the applicant to understand why we were asking. It's not so much about our ordinance, it just, we've learned now that there are other industry requirements that we couldn't control for in our ordinance and had a really significant impact on the neighbors last year when we built a parking structure. So that's where the question comes from. Mr. Foster, did you have other questions?
Just a clarification. Just so, this is so obvious. We're looking at plans dated February 7th, correct? The revised plans.
Revised plans are stamped. Question.
It's 215 is the revised plan.
215?
It should be yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Yes. It's Untitled one.
Right there. Here, 215.
Oh, good eye. A201 looks like it's 27, and then we have the revised floor plans, sheet A would be 215, is that correct?
Yes.
For reference for the motion. Sorry, it's so particular.
It says per city comments 27, and then the others are revision 215. Okay. All right. Other questions and comments from the commission? I've got one last question for our city staff. Probably a Kyle question. Sorry to put you on the spot, but it's about open area. I think we probably need to include a condition, just thinking back to Bester Flats about how we reduced the open area requirement. Do we need to include a condition allowing a reduction of open area?
So I could actually tackle that one. So,
Hey.
hi,
I
everyone.
love how much you're reading the zoning ordinance.
Right.
So fun.
So we actually did not see an opportunity in ordinance for you to provide a waiver because that was a PUD.
Oh, that was a
There
PUD.
Right. So what we have in there is a condition that requires them to comply with the 10%.
Yes.
One item, and we had submitted the question. I don't know if the development team had a chance to answer it just yet, but we weren't sure if the 3.7 that they were providing included the proposed landscaping in the right-of-way areas. If it did, and they're at 3%, so it did not include that. So what we would do, we would propose to allow that to be included in the calculation. That being said, that's one of the reasons we wanted to finalize that at the administrative level. And the way staff was prepared to look at that, hearing that that wasn't included in the 3.7 was helpful. But knowing that that also requires council approval, staff's approach was going to be to work with the applicant to find a way to create that space. We talked about, for example, the architect talked about insetting the building to allow for additional amenities. We would work with them on that. But one of the things that we will do is work with the applicant to see what that calculation is, including the landscaped right-of-way areas, to see if that provides the sufficient percentage.
Thank you, Jordan. I see that condition number 5 about city council requirement for Vester Avenue right-of-way planting and landscaping, but I don't see a condition that specifically says the applicant must meet the open space requirement, so we may want to add a condition number 8. It was in the notes on the cover page about open space, but I don't see it in the conditions. So whoever's the motion maker, you may want to or choose to add that, or you can just let it go along with the rest of the staff review.
I apologize, Chair Baker, you are correct. I thought it was in the list of conditions, and we would recommend adding that as condition 8.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I saw it on the front though, so we got it. Thank you. And the applicant did address it. So. We addressed 30-foot parking setback. Now I'm talking to myself.
So we're saying that there's going to be a condition in the site plan review that says the site plan will change.
I'm in condition number 8, the applicant must meet the open space requirement. So it sounds like the city staff is going to work with them to either potentially make a change in the first floor area or to count some of this planting in the right-of-way.
I will say through the chair, there is precedent for immaterial changes to be handled at the administrative level. If anything that needs to be done to require the 10%, if anything done to the site plan in order to meet that requirement generates a material change, such as a significant change to the massing, circulation, or any other criterion, it would come back here. But our goal would be to not trigger that threshold. And we would do that with guidance of the city attorney.
Thank you.
Couple other edits.
It sounds like Commissioner Foster's got another question.
Just another couple edits to the
Conditions? So on the conditions, I made a note related to condition number 1 that the lighting, comma, including required security lighting, comma, must stay on site. So there may be a more elegant way to put that, but just some way convey that there needs to be attention paid to security lighting bleeding off site. I also made a note on condition number 4. It says police and fire comments shall be addressed and included on final site plan. I actually changed that to police, fire, and engineering because there's a conversation in the engineering paperwork about the water main. I know it's happening at the staff level with the applicant. We may share some costs and water main upgrades, but I don't want that to get lost in terms of existing water main and water main needs. So for number 4, I just noted police, engineering, and fire, or police, fire, and engineering. We talked about, on condition number 7, we talked about bicycle parking, and my note was that applicant to work with staff to explore interior bicycle parking. Is that something we still wanted to explore, Commissioner Foster?
personally, I do.
Okay.
If I would say that maybe covered parking might be, in
Covered bicycle parking?
covered bicycle parking to not create any potential hazards.
Does that meet your intention, Michelle, or were you really wanting to?
Yeah, it doesn't, just, I mean, to Councilman's comment earlier, our weather is not so fair here in Michigan, and I think that on nights such as these, when it's sleeting and raining, covered is not necessarily the same as indoor. And since this is an area of where quite a few commuters for local businesses could potentially park their biking, that's what I see the benefit of having indoor parking. I do, though, take to heart Commissioner Showalter's comments about the security of it, so I think that potential language that would incorporate to, I think that exterior parking that is covered should be required, and then if there is a secure, safe way to do indoor parking, that would be a preference, but not a requirement for me.
Did Matt work that one out? And then I added a condition number 8, that the applicant must meet open space requirement. And obviously I know that the city is working administratively on that. We just discussed whether or not changes would need to come back depending on how much they affect the site. Did I miss any? I tried to keep notes as people were.
Can we strike out condition 2 because the elevation was already provided?
Oh, I meant to, I checked it, but I didn't strike it. Yes, I do think we can strike condition 2 unless someone feels differently. Because the updated elevations with the 55-foot are here.
Yeah, I had just edited it to say that it would meet the requirements as shown in plans dated.
Oh, okay, that'll work too.
As revised, just to make it clear.
With the revision date? Great.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Jordan, quick question for you. With the utility poles that are directly adjacent to the existing property, are there any kind of upgrades that have to be made due to the proximity to a taller building, like the parking deck?
So that's something we're going to look at if this gets approved. One thing that we've experienced with DTE is they create work orders like once you have a project. So that's something that's on our list. We assume that there is an opportunity for some upgrades, but I know with the DOT, it can be a very expensive proposition. So a lot of times the default is to design not to touch them. But as we tried with the DOT and as we'll try here, if there's an opportunity to upgrade or, God forbid, bury them, that's something that we would like to look at. We've already had some peripheral conversations with DTE and trying to navigate the bureaucracy in terms of getting, some initial feedback, but they won't really get into the substance until you have an address and you have a project, and then they basically create a work order. But that's something that's on our radar for sure.
Okay.
Thanks, Commissioner Hagfors.
I would
Commissioner Foster?
suggest to edit 3 to include that the primary building material to be specified as a brick veneer, as it is indicated as block on the site plan. And that and it says in the staff report that the waste management plan should be confirmed. Is that still? So I would just add an additional requirement to that the applicant confirm the waste management plan with city staff.
That would be number 9.
Yes.
Okay.
Chair Baker, if I may pose a quick question, just as Kyle and I were deliberating off to the side, and on the issue of lighting, while we're still awaiting for some of the police department's comments, I know with the DOT, the security lighting in the alley was of importance. And so, obviously, I know to the south, this building, it's open, but that might be something that they have as part of that photometric plan. And is there any, in terms of the intent of the light spillage issue, is there any nuance or any sort of guidance you'd want us to follow from a conditions perspective when it comes to that lighting? I know that was also a point of consternation with the DOT, and that's something that we can basically turn the screws on. But I wanted to just kind of bring that up and just make sure that may be a little different than the roof, if you will.
Even in an alley, if this were, let's say they were building a single-story restaurant, right? So even with an alley treatment, there'd be some type of downward directed lighting on the first story. So if you feel more comfortable that we make an exception for alley security in condition 1, you're not backing up to single-story residential, so a different site, different treatment, probably more forgiving on this alley, but I just can't imagine that we're ever going to have, sort of like the straight out glaring security light. It's always going to be shielded, unless that's what the police department wanted, or?
No, I think, I just wanted to make sure, in terms of crossing that T. I think, given what you just laid out, we can operate within the language that you've proposed for that condition.
Okay.
But I just wanted to make sure that was, particularly for the minutes purposes, if we start working on this and we want to go back, just to make sure that we know, and the police department knows what your intent was.
Yeah, I mean, even the things that we saw for across the street on Vester, or even going back to the very preliminary proposals for the residential at the dot, where, we saw some very preliminary renderings. We talked about, like, don't wash your light up, your light has to be screened down. So unless the police have a really big problem with that, I think that's easy enough to do.
Yes, through the chair, if I may. I finally found our lighting ordinance.
Oh, love it.
And we have specific lighting requirements for parking decks. And actually, as I recall, I think I helped write this ordinance, so as I see it, it's all coming back to me. So all lights shall be fully shielded and directed downward. However,
What section is this, Michelle? Sorry, where are we?
I believe that it's section 6-385.
Okay. 24-6-3-8-5?
It is not in the zoning ordinance, I don't believe.
Oh, it's in the code of ordinances. That's why we didn't get it last time. Oh, okay, go
I
ahead.
did
So,
do
all right, so code of ordinances, section 6, 385.
So due to the uniqueness of how you operate within a parking structure and the amount of visibility you need to maneuver through the parking lanes, we actually require quite a high luminescence within parking decks. So at ramp areas, it is required to be 20%, a 20-foot candle max, which is quite higher than we would typically see in other areas. And at entrance areas, actually 50-foot candle. There's reasons for this, good reasons, so it's for safety. However, we don't have a requirement at the property line that it be reduced to a certain foot candle. So our ordinance does not actually require this. And this is where, because of the high intensity luminescence that you require in the ramp and entrance areas, that can bleed out, and we don't actually have a requirement to then shut that off. So we do require that lighting be downward directed and shielded from the edges of the perimeter of the site. However,
What's the number again? 6-385?
6-385, correct. It's in Article 6 -7, environmental performance.
Oh, 6
So
So what you're saying is that my motion might conflict with our code of ordinances?
and that it might be difficult for the city staff to use the ordinance to require, specific lighting around the edge of the property.
Interesting. Any thoughts on this from the commission? We can't change this. We can't amend this. This is not literally not our ordinance. And we may be setting up, here we go, 6-3. We may be setting up we may be setting ourselves up for a similar issue that happened at the dot. 6-385.
I think,
Put as a condition to, that the qualified lighting designer has to design the lights in a way to reduce spillage, and without putting a number to it. It doesn't look like we can really put a number on it, but we can list it as one of the priorities, but.
Parking deck, yeah, gosh. I don't want to set us up to have exactly the same problem, but an ordinance we don't control may be requiring this.
However, we do control the site plan.
I'm sorry, because you guys are starting to talk like Peanuts parents. I just, can you explain to me what ordinance we're dealing with if it's not our ordinance?
So it's the city's code of ordinances, not the zoning code. So,
Okay, so it's got to go to council for a change.
yeah,
Okay,
where your ordinance commission comes in.
yeah,
You still have one.
yes, we do.
Okay.
It's Commissioner James and Commissioner,
Okay.
council
What do you
person.
think, Jordan? I'm stumped. I mean, I feel really strongly that I don't want to make the same mistake twice, but I'm not sure what we do here. I don't want to make a motion that can't reasonably be fulfilled by the applicant, nor do I want us to have residents saying, why did you do this again?
So I have a suggestion, I don't know if this helps, but perhaps a condition might basically direct us, knowing that this would have to go to council for special land use anyway, might direct us to investigate through the ordinance revision committee at council level, an opportunity to eliminate light spillage at the property line while complying with all other applicable ordinances. So that would allow us to do, if I said that correctly, which I think I did, that would allow us to then from this step to council, is to bat that around at ordinance review. Staff could work with the city attorney and the ordinance review committee, come up with a potential change, or at least a language clarification that would allow us to not have this sort of conflict/box that we find ourselves in, and basically endeavor to meet the intent that the commission just laid out, which is to not have spillage past the property line, and to reduce the foot candle at that line. So that would give us the latitude to figure that out. You've sort of set the mandate that you want us to do that, and we would then follow the appropriate steps before bringing this to council.
We would direct the council ordinance committee to investigate, or direct staff to work with council ordinance committee. I don't know that I can direct the ordinance committee, but direct the council ordinance committee to investigate lighting requirements to eliminate spillage.
Yes, or provide substantial foot candle reduction at the property line to avoid light pollution on adjacent properties.
So I think that as the governing body of the site plan approval that permits us certain rights, I believe that we would be able to include some sort of motion. It's not changing. If we want to require or limit the light spillage at the property line, that is not going against the existing ordinance. It is just adding a layer to it. I don't think it would necessarily require an act of city council to include that.
But if we've got ramp areas that require, 20-foot candles.
On site.
Okay.
I'm just saying that I think that we could, I think my concern is that if we direct staff to have the applicant meet the photometric requirements, that's not necessarily directing them any further guidance of, what we're looking for. But if we provide that guidance, I think that's within our right and would be helpful to city staff and the applicant.
Are you comfortable with how Jordan phrased that, or are you thinking something different?
Well, I think if we want to eliminate light spillage, I'm not sure if that's necessarily feasible, to be honest, because we're right up at against the lot line. We also have public rights-of-way on 3 of the lot lines.
I struck the thing about must stay on site.
Oh, okay.
Through the chair, so we're really talking about the rooftop, right? You're not talking about,
I'm mostly talking about the rooftop.
yeah, okay. So looking at the ordinance, because I'm assuming you're talking about section 6-385?
Yes.
Okay. In the table, it talks about parking deck, and there's three items: at ramps, at entrance, at parking, maneuvering, and walkway areas. Can council just add a 4th one that says rooftop parking?
think that's what council members Mikulski and Brunner James could figure out with our city staff and bring to you with the special land use. It's gonna have to come to council anyway.
Yeah, well, and I just want to make sure that I can have a conversation with them.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
But maybe
would
you,
say-
Greg, can follow up.
Through the chair, since you are just recommending, oh, I shouldn't say just, but because you're a recommending body for special land use, you could recommend that that be a condition that council apply through the ordinance revision process, to Councilman Polika's point. So you could do that, and that would essentially set up the directive for us to prepare that.
So we would recommend that council review section 385 related to parking deck lighting.
In general, or not?
I-
I think you would, through Chair Baker, through the chair, sorry, what you would be recommending is that you have that ordinance apply on the roof, and that change be added to that ordinance through the special land use process, through the ordinance review committee. So essentially, you would be recommending that condition apply as if it were in the ordinance, knowing that you're a recommending body and that has to be acted on by council, because like any other recommendation that you send up, council could say, I like that one or I don't like that one. And so if you're recommending that condition apply, noting that it would require an act of the ordinance review committee and then by council. So essentially, you're planting your flag and saying, we want this condition to apply, we don't want that light spillage on the roof, or off the, you know what I mean, but past the property line on the roof. And then that would be a cue for council, and, well, one, for staff to prepare through the ordinance review process, a recommended change that would incorporate your recommendation for council to consider up or down, at the same meeting that we would do the special land use.
Okay. Okay, so they
Clear
still
as
need
mud,
to-
or does that make sense?
No, they still need to submit the final photometric plan, so the first part of condition 1 stays. But then we would recommend a change to ordinance section 6-385 that eliminates rooftop light spillage for parking decks.
I am not opposed to that language and that process. However, I am concerned that it could slow down the approval process for this project. I don't want to tie an entire ordinance amendment, lighting.
I do.
I remember the process for amending this lighting ordinance, and it took many months. And I believe that it could potentially become conflated in how specifically we would change the lighting ordinance, and so that it might not be as quick as process, as we would want it to be.
I
That would be
agree,
my
but
concern.
I think it's this is too big of an issue for me to not get real specific on it.
I guess what I say, I think we should do the ordinance amendment, and I think that we should limit the lighting on this specific plan, but I don't necessarily think we need to tie the two, and I think we can do them separate, would be my suggestion.
And I had a question for the architect. Do you guys do parking decks quite frequently?
Under buildings, typically.
Oh, okay.
Or under roofs.
Easier, huh? No,
But-
for lighting.
Okay, I was just curious whether or not you've seen zero spillage as being something feasible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who do you use for your lighting plans then? Do you have like a lighting specialist, or is it?
We typically, we subcontract a lighting specialist, and they usually guide the light intensity with interest to the interior, maneuverability and security and so forth. We typically guide them to ensure that there's no spillage outside, because that ultimately comes back to us, and people, we don't want to create a nuisance.
Right. Is it, I guess, Michelle, I'm not sure how to phrase this to accomplish what you're suggesting in terms of not tying the two together.
Yeah, I think that even though we don't have the jurisdiction over amending the lighting ordinance, I believe that we have the jurisdiction over requiring that light photometrics per the site plan that create.
Okay.
that I believe that we could direct then, when the final photometric plan is submitted and reviewed by staff, that it would have certain requirements in terms of how the, the foot candle requirement.
Meet the ordinance at the time that it's submitted? Because by then, council should have reviewed and changed the ordinance, I would assume, because that's going to be a couple of months.
Wouldn't it also, since there's restaurants on the tab, couldn't we just say it's one of those? It's not just a parking deck.
On the top it is, though. It's parking, maneuvering, and walkway.
We're reviewing an entire site.
So something
Yeah, but
like
so was the
using
dot,
the-
and we saw how they interpreted it there.
That doesn't mean it's right.
I don't know if we can direct the interpretation, but we can direct the, what should it say, guys? Final photometric plan shall be submitted with the final site plan. Yes, definitely.
and meet the luminescence requirements at the property line for a high activity use. Or medium activity use. But that's at the lot line, and again, I think we might have difficulty there, so I think maybe Councilman Polika's suggestion was a good one, that the time of final site plan will have many more months under our belt, and maybe city council will have a better ordinance approved by them.
So this motion should address section 6-385, or it should address light bleeding off the site, or both?
Or both. It
Sorry,
should
everyone,
address-
this is why we don't normally design at this
I know.
table.
I think it should address the ordinance in relationship to rooftop spillage, like rooftop light spillage.
Okay, how about this? Final photometric plan shall be submitted with the final site plan, period. Rooftop light should be contained on site, period. Recommend review of ordinance 6-385. Yeah, recommend review of ordinance 6-385?
Yeah.
Okay.
So through the chair, a further question. So once the ordinance committee reviews and makes changes, does it then have to come back to planning commission?
No, that's a council.
It is strictly a council, okay.
Yep. Yeah, we would never see it.
That's a time saver.
Doesn't
Well,
matter.
it'll take 2 readings, but yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I got it. Other questions or comments at the table? Someone want to try to make a motion? Or does someone want me to read my notes?
Foster moves.
I was going to say, if you read it, I would say as stated.
The motion on, so. Foster moves in the matter of 180 Foster, that the planning commission approve based on plans dated February 4th, 2022, with A2.0.1 and A2.0.2 dated February 7th, with the functional concept A revised 2.1522. With the findings as submitted in the packet 1 through 4. Thank you.
Are you on special land use or site plan? You're on site plan.
Currently, we're approving the site plan first.
That's fine, just make the motion. It's fine. Go for it, keep going.
That the, thank you.
You're fine.
That the final photometric plan, meeting requirements, and to be harmonious with the neighborhood, shall be submitted with the final site plan for review and approval by city staff. That
Recommend review of ordinance 6-385?
that rooftop light shall be contained on site, and recommend city council review of ordinance 6-385. 2,
You fixed number 2 already in your motion, I think.
correct. So we'll Well, actually, I'm going to keep saying. So 2, that the building height and final site plan submission to meet the requirements as shown in the plan dated February 7th of a 55-foot. 3, that the primary building materials to be brick veneer.
You want to keep the beginning of it, final color elevation shall be indicated, and then add on primary building materials.
Yes, I believe that they added that, but yeah. Yeah, sorry, Marnie. So 3 as in the packet plus the additional as read, that the primary building material to be brick veneer. 4, that police, fire, and engineering comments to be addressed on final site plan, to be reviewed and approved by city staff. 5, as stated in the packet.
I made it separate.
6, where was I? 6. 6, that the ADA and EV spaces shall meet ordinance requirements to be included in the final site plan for review and approval by staff, and that exterior bike parking to be provided, exterior covered bike parking to be provided. The applicant to work with city staff to incorporate indoor bicycle parking to the extent possible to be designed with safety in mind in the final site plan. We don't need it anymore. Yes, actually.
Finalized parking count.
7, a finalized parking count, parking space dimensions and aisle widths shall be included in the final site plan, as stated as number 6 in the packet. 8, that the applicant to work with staff to meet the 10% open space requirement. And 9, that the applicant to confirm their waste management plan with city staff by final site plan approval.
All I had.
Through the
We need a second
chair.
first.
Oh,
Right, that was a motion by Commissioner Foster. Is there a second for discussion?
Second.
There's a second by Commissioner Showalter. Thank you. Discussion from Councilmember Polaka.
Your last one, does that include the conversation that I had with Jordan in regards to the public access, well, business access to the parking that's going to be similar to what we have on the dot, or was that strictly on-site?
Sorry, Councilman, I didn't, we can add as a friendly amendment that, so the applicant to confirm waste management plan to include a discussion with the possibility of incorporating a
District waste
Downtown,
district
yeah,
waste
district waste.
plan with city staff
Okay.
by final site plan approval.
Waste recycle. Thank you.
Good.
Is there anything that you would like us to repeat, City Clerk?
I'm going to have to listen to the whole thing.
I have it written down as well.
You could provide me with your notes afterwards, that would be hugely helpful.
Yes. Great. All right, we've got a motion on the table by Commissioner Foster. There was just a second by Commissioner Showalter. There was a friendly amendment made to condition number 9 to incorporate the possibility of a district waste management plan. Is that
Yes, I'm back.
accepted by our seconder? Great, thank you. Discussion on this motion. Okay, we will have our notes here for our city clerk. To our city staff, to Jordan, and to the applicant, were these clear? Are there any questions on the, we just did a bunch of work at the table that, I just want to make sure that there weren't any questions before we vote.
I'll say from a staff perspective, Chair Baker, we are crystal clear, and we'll work on those conditions.
Okay. I don't think we added a ton of new stuff. I just wanted to make sure, see if there were any questions before we voted on what we did.
No. Just with regard to the brick veneer, I just wanted to be clear. The module sizes that we're proposing are block size, but they're not true CMUs. I just want that to be clear.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as it meets the ordinance for the architectural compatibility guidelines, then I'm all right with it. It just can't be CMU.
Okay, got it.
Would you,
It's just because all it said on the site plan was block, so I think we were just looking for a little more
Yeah,
specificity.
black implies something different than brick veneer, but it's fine.
I think that we'd be okay with providing a little bit more flexibility to say primary building material to be brick veneer or otherwise approved primary material in the code of ordinances. It just might provide more flexibility. I know that can.
Sure.
Okay. So that was just an amendment offered by Commissioner Foster on item number 3, the primary building material be indicated as brick veneer or as an otherwise approved material.
Primary building
Primary
material.
material, an otherwise approved primary material. Is that acceptable, Commissioner Showalter?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Great. Okay, last call for questions or discussion on the motion. We will look for a roll call vote, please, from our city clerk.
Okay, Commissioner Cesar,
Yes.
Raisin,
Yes.
Foster,
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Askew, Polika,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
and Baker.
Yes, the motion passes. Thank you very much.
You need to do the other special land use, right?
Oh, wait, we have to do a special land use. Wait, sorry. Hold on, one more, sorry. Oh, geez, thanks, Matt. Okay.
Foster moves in the matter.
We normally do the special land use first.
Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Foster?
Foster moves in the matter of 180 Foster, after public hearing was held as set for this date in place, that the Planning Commission recommends to the City Council approval of the special land use based on the plans dated February 4th, 7th, and 15th, and received on February 7th and 15th with the following findings as listed in the packet, 1 through 5.
And I'd like to make an amendment to that.
Is there a second? Sorry, first, let's get a second to what she made.
I second the motion.
A second by Commissioner Azar. Okay.
It
Commissioner
says,
Walter?
it says plans dated February 4th, 2022, but they're actually plans dated there's also the plans dated February 15th and as well.
I believe I said that.
Did you add, received 2/7 and 2/15?
The new ones, because it's based on the plans that we got today, too.
Yeah, Michelle included that in her motion, so it's based on plans dated February 4th, 7th, and 15th,
Oh, okay, never mind.
and received February 7th and
missed that.
15th. Yep, dated 4th, 7, and 15, and received
Okay,
7 and
yeah.
15. Yep. Here we go. Thank you. Okay, no amendment necessary. We've got a motion on the table by Commissioner Foster with a second by Commissioner Azar. Is there any discussion on this motion? We are a recommending body for the special land use. We've approved the site plan, which is backwards from how we normally do it. So let's hope the special land use is okay. All right, we'll have a roll call vote, please, from our city clerk.
Commissioner Cesar,
Yes.
Raisin,
Yes.
Foster,
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
Yes.
Askew, abstain, and Baker.
Yes, the motion passes. Thank you. All right. Thank you for catching that, Matt. We will now move on to, so we've got this and our old business. Michelle, do we want to do that update at administrative items or new business?
I think we can, wait till administrative.
Administrative, okay. We do not have any other new business at this time, but we do have 2 discussion items. The first is the discussion of a restaurant concept at 23250 Woodward. So I will invite our city staff to give us an introduction. Then we will have the applicant come up and share any additional information that they would like to.
Good evening again, Planning Commission. So this is just a discussion item only. This is 23250 Woodward. So this is the southeast corner of Woodward and East Maplehurst. I've got a few views up on the screen of what this looks like. You may or may not recall, but this used to be an auto repair facility. In 2016, it went to the Planning Commission and also the City Council to be converted to a carry-out restaurant. Also in 2016, they did receive special land use for a outdoor seating area. I think the restaurant has kind of changed hands a few times. Most recently, it was Babylon Garden, I believe. So they do still have the configuration of the exterior areas. So there's a parking lot in the rear, and then there is that outdoor seating area in front. The applicant is here tonight. They would like to convert this to a standard restaurant. So it was approved as a carryout restaurant, which does have a notably different parking requirement. So with a carryout restaurant, I think you only need 6 per carryout station plus your employees. I think on the final plan that was approved in 2016, they needed 8 spaces. I think they worked out to get 7, and maybe there's a lease with the company across Maplehurst to the north. So they got their parking requirements. But converting it to a standard restaurant does make it a more intense use, so that's part of why it's being brought to you as a change in use, or why it would be if they apply. But right now, we're just considering the parking difficulties with the site. I think that's the most important and pressing issue here. But, you know, some of the more cheery news is that they are proposing some really interesting outdoor elements and, of course, a overhaul of the interior. So I would like to invite the applicant up to go over those changes, and we can continue on with the discussion as you see fit.
Thank you, Kyle.
Evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Kelly Allen here tonight with the team that is going to be One Ton Tomato. And I'd like to introduce to you Regan Bloom. She would be the owner, and her partner, Tony Montelli. And this is Alex Reshka, and he is the designer.
Welcome.
Thank you. So as Kyle said, it's a really nice project. It's been vacant for a little while. Regan is known to the city because she owns Toast in Ferndale, which is next door, and she's been very successful there. And so we think that some of the parking challenges can be met because of her relationship with you know, herself next door, and the different hours. Toast, as you know, is primarily a breakfast and early lunch type of establishment. This will be a dinner type of establishment. So maybe Alex can address the parking more clearly. We will be asking for a liquor license here. And we'll be asking for what's called a redevelopment license, which I'm sure you're familiar with. We need to go through the city council to do that, and the state of Michigan. And several things have to be demonstrated to both the city and the state to get that kind of license, in terms of a minimum requirement for investment and seating, hours of operation, those kinds of things. So the concept I'm going to let Regan explain to you, and as only she can. And we think, based on the square footage, something along the lines of 40-something spots might be necessary. And we think if we put it all together, we can come up with 35, 37, something like that, using Toast, using some bike racks. We also did talk to Justin and Jordan originally about possibly looking at some things with putting a bus stop in front of it. So, I mean, we're willing to really work hard to get the parking that's required and do shared parking with Toast next door, and that's got a bunch of parking there. So I'm going to introduce Regan right now, and she can tell you about the concept and questions that you have.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello,
Thank you
welcome.
for taking some time for us to come in and talk about what we want to do with the space. I've been eyeballing that spot for forever, and I just knew that it was like not being utilized at all. They never did any business. Every time I drive by, I'm like, is there going to be a lease sign in the window? Finally, it came up for lease. I think it could be just such a beautiful space. That patio is huge, just a garden, beautiful outdoor seating, covered patio so people can, you know, spend the time and not have to worry about raining and that. We've learned that over the years with other restaurants that when you put just umbrellas out there, you end up chasing the rain and, you know, lots of conditions. So we want to make it like a really nice covered patio. I want to do, it's sort of an upscale Mexican ideas, sort of, I'm fleshing out the menu as I'm, you know, thinking of things, and it's always been part of my menu, you know, at Toast, so it's kind of been my style for a long time of food. A good drink program, casual, but still kind of, you know, definitely a place you could bring a date to. It's not going to be a bar that serves tacos, so I'm trying to, you know, move away from that. I feel like when I'm in Ferndale these days, I'm having a lot of hard time finding places I want to go to eat. It's like either just a straight up bar or like super high end in Asagi, like where's sort of the medium places for people to go eat. I also love the idea that it's right next door to a place I already own, super easy for me to manage, utilize my staff back and forth some with managing and so forth like that. And I'm just super excited about it. We've just been throwing around a lot of design ideas and things I've been thinking about for a long time, wanting to start a different project than Toast. So it's fun for me to do something new.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Kelly, was there anything else on the site plan, or was there anyone else who wanted to talk about?
I'm just going to answer questions. You guys have questions.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Let me see if there's anyone here in the audience who had a question or comment on this. Okay. All right, we'll start with questions and comments from the commission. Who'd like to kick us off? Do you want me to?
I'll start through the
Councilmember?
chair. This is actually for the owner. You mentioned that you're going to be serving alcohol, liquor, and I don't see a bar, so I'm assuming that it's all going to be just service to table.
No, there's inside, if you look, yeah, there's outside, that's a service bar. That's not really like a fully functional bar. Inside, these are sort of bar concepts that I'm thinking about. If you look right there, it's going to be right when you walk in the front doors, it's going to be like an L-shaped.
Okay, I guess I'm confused because
It's an
I see the service counter with the yogurt place and,
You might be
Okay.
You
looking.
might be looking at the.
I think
previous
you're looking at something different.
You're looking at the wrong,
oh.
next one, next item, I think.
You're looking at. They're,
Okay, I'm not sure where you
Yeah.
are.
Are you looking at Drayden?
Go to page 87 in the packet.
No, I'm looking at 23250 Woodward.
you might be-
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go up a few pages, Greg.
Yeah, it starts out with the initial pictures of what the interior looks like now, and then we kind of threw together.
Not what I got.
There's two attachments. One's kind of like a real estate listing, and then another one's
Yeah, they're
like
looking at what's
renderings.
currently.
Oh, I'm so lost. Okay, so,
It's on the screen.
Yeah.
Oh, it's on the screen too.
well, that's
Yeah,
outside.
sorry, it's on the screen.
Yeah, there's an,
Yeah, I was talking about indoor.
Yep, there's indoor too, yeah.
I
they
didn't
include
I
the
didn't see
current
bar
floor plan.
indoor.
Yep,
There you
so
go.
this is the layout right here. This would be the front door right here, vestibule. Go in, there's gonna be tables inside, but then this is the bar here.
Okay.
And this is the door to the patio. I had to split it up so I could get everything on one page for you guys, just
Yeah.
to kind of give you some idea what it looks like.
Beautiful.
But see, I was referencing the other document that has your menu and all of that, and if I scroll down, it must be the old layout of the other building. Okay,
What's currently there, Babylon Garden.
yeah. I didn't know they had yogurt. Okay, now I gotta relook at this, so go on to someone else,
Okay, thanks, Councilmember.
because all my questions were around different drawings.
I've got a couple questions on, surprise, surprise, parking. So you guys have been saying, Toast is next door, but Toast isn't exactly next door. Toast is
Well, 4 doors.
down the street and across Lewiston.
Yeah, so what I did right here, just so you could see it.
Right.
Here's where the proposed property is, and
Do you
then
know the
one
distance?
block.
Yeah, do you know the distance? So our shared parking agreements need to be within 500 feet of the site.
I don't know the exact footage right there.
So just a heads up for you that in terms of shared parking, we would need to know that distance in order for it to qualify.
Yeah, through the chair, I do believe it is within 500 feet.
Okay.
It's like 420-ish,
Okay,
around there.
thank you.
estimating it's around 400.
I was kind of counting buildings and like right of way, so, okay. And then, yes.
To answer your question about parking, can't really see it in here, but I try to highlight in red just so you can see it. Right here, you can see that there's parking, in the street. Obviously, you don't want to park in the street in front of residential homes, but right next to it, there's like 3 spots, so I highlighted there.
Yep.
Parking in front, they're parking on the property, and then the block away is their parking in the back. So that's kind of what I referenced to. Also, I didn't put on here, so totaling, I tried to get, there's 33 parking spots available, but we're also going to do bike racks, like right on the corner, and there's going to be bike racks in the back.
Okay,
So this is the patio. We'd have the bike racks right there in the corner. And then in the back of the building, back here, there's a bike rack there too.
would that bike rack take up a parking space?
No.
I just know
parking.
it's really
Yeah,
tight back
so-
there.
Yeah, let me see if there's the. So this is the back of the building as
Yep.
is.
And just the way it's angled, it's like a dead spot right there.
Okay.
What you guys talked about earlier with the dead zone there.
So we don't typically, in our parking counts, we don't typically count those public shared on-street spaces.
Okay. Like the 3 here. Okay.
Like the 3 there, or on Woodward, or down the ones on Woodward in front of Toast. One of the things that could be helpful here is, thinking about your complementary hours. That was something either Kelly or Regan mentioned. So talk to us a little bit about how these two businesses and parking lots interact and how you would kind of control and police that, because I know everyone who goes to the New Way parks in the Toast parking lot at night, right? So in order to really reserve that for a different use, there's going to need to be some type of different regulation or use. So I wonder if you just talk to us about the functionality of actually marrying these two spaces, hours of operation and policing of
I
parking.
mean, obviously more aggressive signage.
Oh, sorry, I just want to make sure Regan's at the mic.
Okay.
Unless you've got something, Kyle?
Through the
Okay.
chair, I just wanted to
Sure.
add, I think we preliminary looking at a parking requirement of 23 spaces.
23. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, got it. But
'Cause
functionally,
it's
they
like
think they want
100
40.
per the floor area. So based on the numbers that I ran, I think we're looking at 20, 23, 24-ish. So that's what we're shooting for here.
Thank you. Okay, so sorry, Regan, talk to us a little bit about how the two
Well,
spaces interact.
Yeah, I mean, more aggressive signage, agreements with Jamie next door at New Way. We've always had just a very copacetic because.
I know, you guys have been neighbors
hours,
forever.
It works out.
Understood.
I kind of feel like that whole area will get a lot more utilization of people bopping down from New Way, going to actually have dinner,
Mm-hmm.
opening up that block and having just more action happening there, I think will be kind of a nice thing for everybody.
Okay.
We've always just had the attitude, sort of the more the merrier in the neighborhood, just trying to, light it up a little bit with some more fun things going on. So,
Yeah.
and also we use the mattress company right there. Everybody uses that parking at night, and that's a
Okay.
big lot. It's got like a ton of spots.
I was going to ask about, and maybe you don't get this sort of feedback because Toast is a daytime business and people are at work during the day, so it's easy to park on Lewiston. But do you get feedback from your neighbors, the residents on Lewiston, about any parking issues or anything related to Toast? Because we certainly hear it when we talk about nighttime businesses. So I'm wondering if
No, not
heard it.
really at all.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, the street tends to be pretty filled up with residents parking on the street.
Yep.
So there's not really a lot of open spaces. I'm just always surprised. I'm jam-packed all the time and no one ever seems to have an issue with finding a parking spot. They drive around till they find one or they scoot in somewhere. A lot of people ride their bikes, a lot of people walk from the neighborhood. Yeah, nighttime, I don't know if that's a different story, but
Yeah.
it just seems to be not really, it's not an issue.
Yeah, I was wondering how they'd interact, but also in terms of feedback, because we heard from neighbors on Maplehurst when the carryout restaurant went in, that they were concerned about parking congestion, and that they were concerned about trash and rats, and all the things we talk about in Ferndale all the time, right? Because we're so close together with our residential and commercial. So just trying to anticipate that for you, that this is the type of feedback that we typically hear as the planning commission, and it would be helpful if you're going to bring an application back to us. I think one of the first questions we would typically ask is, have you talked to your neighbors yet? So it might be helpful to knock on a few doors on Maplehurst and see if people had problems with Babylon Gardens, with either parking or where their dumpster was, or where
Well, they have a pretty nice enclosed space for their dumpster.
Yeah, they really upgraded it. And
Yeah.
they upgraded that fence too, because it was just like ugly chain link, and so they upgraded that too, but.
Yeah, so it's more finished off, so you don't it's not as unsightly as it could be. Yeah, I'm more than willing to go over and knock on some doors, and I've been in the neighborhood for a long time, so I feel like most people know me, so that's
Yeah.
helpful. Hoping that they'll be excited about a new place that they can walk directly to and have drinks and dinner and not have to drive.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll do that for sure.
Okay, just again, in trying to anticipate the type of feedback that if this was an actual, site plan with a conversation about parking, shared parking or waiving parking minimums or that sort of thing, the feedback that I expect we would probably get, so just to make sure you're aware.
Okay, for sure.
Through the chair?
Yes, please.
This would actually be a request to Kyle, and it's in relationship to what you're asking, or you discussed. If we could get a report from the police department on any complaints that any of the neighbors made over the years with Babylon Gardens, just to get an understanding of, if they're gonna carry those complaints over with a new business moving in. It's really just a heads up to you. And may give you an opportunity to, identify certain people that you want to reach out to.
Are
and-
happy, okay.
Yeah. And then the other question I have is to you. Can you share with us what your expected price points are gonna be?
I don't want to get pricey. I want to be, my concepts are always wanting to be the place that you want to come to a couple times a week and not go for a special high-end dinner. So I'm thinking between like 15 and $22, so, sort of basically how I price out toast, same thing.
So you'll probably get a number of people within the neighborhood just walking down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like a great place you can just go eat and hang out for a couple hours and be able to walk home.
Okay.
Other questions or comments from the commission?
Through the chair.
Commissioner Forrest?
First, one question about the layout again, if you can pull back up the floor plan. Where was the proposed front door again?
Right here.
Yeah, there's two entrances in the front, and we were going to utilize the one that has a vestibule.
Okay.
And go back to it.
Such a funny shaped building, it's hard to
It
tell.
is.
It is. It's a
Hard to tell which end is up, yeah. Where's north?
You just passed it.
There we
It's
go.
near the bottom. Now that I know it.
Okay.
That's not it there. There you go.
Here we go.
Sorry.
So see that front vestibule right there?
Yeah.
We just thought that would be the smartest way. And then it's also under the covered patio, which is nice. So if it's raining and so forth, or people are and waiting to come in or whatever, it's covered.
That's the woodward side.
Yeah, and then the other door will be waiting for service staff to come out and service the patio.
Okay. I mean, if I may make any suggestion or kind of request, I think to promote the walkability and whatnot, if I was a resident, I mean, I would be coming from south of Woodward if I was walking. That's even farther walk to kind of walk around again the front door. If there was the opportunity
It's right
to
here.
enter off of Woodward.
There's a little door right there, right in the fence.
Okay, and that will be accessible and open for anyone when you guys are in business.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
Because then you got a door here and that goes right into the inside as well.
Yep, okay. That's good to see. And then, this is probably a question for city staff. With their proposed kind of privacy wall and pergola in the front, is that allowed per the ordinance, or is that kind of a special use? Because I know we've had a project come to us in the past that kind of had similar proposals, and I don't think we supported it, so.
For the outdoor sales area in a
Correct.
C2
Correct,
at Bloom's? Is
correct,
that what you're thinking of?
correct.
So I'm not familiar off the top of my head, but I can explore
Existing
that
approved
option. And
patio. I think it's existing approved patio seating, right?
it is, but I think they are proposing to expand it.
Expand it, add a pergola, add an overhang,
We're
so.
keeping the same footprint, just adding the pergola. So if you look at it, it's the same footprint of where the fencing is now.
It looks a lot larger than where the fencing is now, because actually with your corner where your pergola is, that part is currently an open, like, just concrete. And so that would be an addition on top of that, plus the structure and the overhang.
What are you saying? Right now, the fence is kind of like right here.
Oh, so it is wide.
Yeah.
It is, yeah, so it's a little bit larger, so.
Just to keep an eye on that as they prepare a site plan?
Correct, and just again, we're always trying to set precedents and making sure that we're being consistent with how we're addressing everything, so.
I think they showed on, I don't have what John was looking at earlier from what's as is right now. Yeah, where's that at?
Yeah, pretty much, it seems like your overhang is where the existing patio is now. It's pretty much the pergola and all of the fencing around that is new patio space. So that wasn't technically approved based on the existing patio, so you're kind of changing the use a little bit.
Okay. And the conversation that Commissioner Hagfors is referencing was in relation to Blooms on 9 Mile, which is in a C2, and we were talking about the percentage of area on your front facade that can be covered for outdoor sales and display. Just for our city staff, so that as you're looking at whether it's restaurant seating or outdoor sales and display, I'm not sure how those are divvied up or if there's an equivalency.
So you said you didn't approve it. Do you like that concept or do you not like that? What's your thoughts on that? I know
We
you just.
did, but it didn't conform to the ordinance.
It didn't conform with the ordinance, and I guess probably my only kind of thought process always is just always thinking of the pedestrian experience on it. So obviously make, like I see you guys have done like a different variation on the wall heights, which kind of help out a little bit. You have a little bit of the plantings, which softens it a little bit.
Yeah.
Still making sure though that it's always accessible on Woodward because as a pedestrian, you don't want to walk against a flat wall. Even if it's
Right.
covered, you still don't want to walk against just a flat wall.
But we opened it up in the middle
Yep.
there, and I kind of gave you a picture of that build out there, is what it's supposed to look like with some greenery in front of it. So yeah, we were just talking about, we don't want something flat, kind
Yep.
of like,
When
yeah,
people kind of still want to see slightly out into the street.
Exactly.
And
right.
And I know I'm getting in the weeds here a little bit, and it doesn't, so.
There's a lot of weeds here, we're good.
Yeah, this can change pretty easily, but you'll have to adjust the swing of some of your exterior patio doors that will be swinging into the sidewalk at that point.
Yeah, yeah.
Into the right of way.
Will be swinging into the right of way because you'll have more than 50 people.
Thanks, Commissioner Showalter.
Just to add to your parking, you know, when you're saying like how they're gonna know basically to park at Toast, right, with signage, a lot of their staff can park in Toast at that point, right?
It's actually what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Was, do you make it staff parking down at Toast and then they walk?
no, you
Then
can
you
just
know.
grab those spots right away.
Exactly, and you would know then that your customers have the spaces closest to the building.
Correct, yeah.
When I worked in retail, that was always our requirement, we had to park.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I have to talk to my kids about it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be an interesting operational way to handle it. But having lived here for so long, the first thing I thought was, no one's ever going to be able to park at Toast because everyone from the New Way parks at Toast. So just thinking about kind of that how the operationalizing, that's not a word, but operationally, how a shared parking agreement between the site and Toast would work, how the hours would complement each other, and, sort of how you would enforce whether it's staff parking is at Toast, or just sort of how you'd use and operationalize that shared parking agreement will be important for us to talk through.
I think it'd be nice here, like this fence that's up, so if people are trying to park in there, put signage right there to say, you know, there's additional parking in the back of Toast. That's perfect spot to do so. So it wouldn't be like going in and then seeing it on the back of the wall of the building. You'd see it.
Question about the balloons discussion.
Yes. C2 outdoor sales and display?
I mean, but that was because they were going to show their product that they're selling on the outside.
Yes.
Wasn't it into the right of way?
And it was into the right of way.
No, I think it was
don't
still
think
on
it
their
was right
existing
away.
property because the building has
Property.
a setback
They
to
were,
it.
they
So
were going, but they were showing their wares that they were selling, and that is not what this is doing.
Yeah, that's why I
If you
wanted
were
to
doing
give Kyle a
product
heads up that there
outside-
might be a difference in that definition.
Okay.
I just think, so obviously the addition of this patio and rebuilding visually the street wall with the pergola and stuff like that, I think is a great value add on a dominant corridor in the city, right? I think it's just a matter of working with staff to make sure that it's consistent with the zoning requirements. I don't think the
Correct.
discussion here is really more of a technical one that I think can be coordinated with staff.
I mean, that's one of the best selling points on the space is the patio
Yeah,
that's never.
totally.
Of course,
It's
yeah.
underutilized, and it's a great
To
opportunity.
the obvious
for
colors.
Leveraging it well.
And I'm actually kind of all for creating a little bit of a higher, because a little bit of a higher, similar to what they have, and not having a really low patio area, because it helps continue the building line from all the, because right now there's like this weird like jog in at that corner, and that corner isn't really like super well defined. But if you can kind of carry that line from
You're
Detroit
sort of
Barber
following
Company.
the sidewalk, it's like.
Right, that rebuilding the street wall, and I think it will benefit any future business.
That's what's there now.
Correct.
Commissioner
So
Hosky?
it's like
Yep.
cement everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just very.
They just put up a fence on the existing pad, pretty much.
Yeah. And you know,
Well, it was a parking lot for,
Yeah.
garage, yeah.
yeah. Any other, either questions for staff or the applicant or directions to the applicant? I have a feeling if they've got a 24 space requirement, not counting the spaces on the street, they've presented the opportunity for 22, which I think is the type of thing that we would typically then discuss. They've gotten pretty close. They do have some street parking. I think, getting some feedback about the function of Babylon Garden and if there were issues with the neighbors would be important. Is there anything else you guys would want to see if the applicants come back with a site plan?
That's great.
All right.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome, thank you. That was our biggest concern. I was like, I really want to be able to patio as, you know, as
Yeah.
much as I can and make it really beautiful. So I want to lay it out in front of you guys. I'm like, is this doable before we go any further?
Yeah, I think just keeping in mind and working with our city staff about, you know, what's already permitted and what might need to be added and making sure we're dotting our i's and crossing our t's on your site plan so you don't waste time or money.
Right. Every one of these meetings is then another month. You know?
Indeed. Understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Okay, item number 8B, this is discussion of 915 East Drayton, Ferndale Food Hall. We'll start with an introduction from our city staff, then we will welcome the applicants up to share, I think we've got a kind of a draft layout and any other information that they brought.
Okay, good evening once again. Just a discussion item, 915 East Drayton. So this is the northeast corner of East Drayton and Burdett. So this is kind of in the area of Woodward Heights and Hilton, in that industrial area that's over there. This is zone M1, which is light industrial. There are actually 3 different buildings on this property. So what's being proposed is a pretty dramatic food hall concept. I'll let the applicant get into that with greater detail, but they're proposing an outdoor seating area, utilizing these buildings differently. For instance, this outlying building down here would be like a pizza place. The main building, it's currently industrial in character. It's like a warehouse. It does have this raised area that they're interested in utilizing. And here's a proposed floor plan. So the biggest area is a sushi production area, and I'll let the applicant explain about that. But beyond that, you can see a series of food concept areas, as well as some, you know, seating and dining areas. You can see actually the line of that overhead. So they would have stairs going up there and an elevator and everything, so they can utilize that kind of half story. So we're just bringing this to discussion to, I guess, take the commission's temperature on this, but also to figure out the best way to move forward. I've noted that there's no clear permitted or special land use in the M1 zoning district that really kind of syncs up with what they're proposing. There's been some preliminary discussion about a PUD, and I just wanted to very quickly read one of the permitted uses in an industrial PUD are commercial uses that provide services to businesses and employees in the immediate area, such as convenience retail, restaurants, business services, and hotels. These all may be permitted in an industrial district where the Planning Commission determines the uses contribute towards an integrated employment district.
Okay.
So with all that fun stuff, I will turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Took a lot of my thunder there as far as the presentation goes. My name is Jason Krieger with Krieger Cloud Architects, 2120 East 11 Mile. I have Patrick Van Len and Tom Violente. They're the owners and operators, so I believe they own the building now, correct? And so, you know, they've been discussing different options. They came up with this, which is a very exciting concept. And so I'm going to let them get a little more in the weeds on the actual work flow of it all, but I do want to touch on just a couple of things before I pass it over to them. You know, as I mentioned, this is what we feel is really a great concept for this area. Okay, it's an industrial area. I do seem to remember seeing something in the ordinance saying that we're allowed to do residential above buildings, right, above the, so it seems like you would want to introduce some other uses in there. And there seems to be a path through PUD to allow a use like this in this neighborhood. Nearby, you have a coffee shop, a brewery, there along Woodward Heights, and there's been some discussion of other residential developments in this area, so it just seems like this could be a great thing and a catalyst to really make this an exciting project. We did note that in the master plan, it seems like under goal number 2, there was a discussion with stakeholders in the area, and they recommended the exact things that are already listed for a PUD requirement, which was retail storefronts associated with product manufacturers, cafe dining establishments. So it seems like this is there's not only a way to do this right now with the PUD, but it also seems to be the vision for the city moving forward. Right now, as mentioned, these buildings are existing, okay? So to orient you, north is to the right. So the proposal is to keep the envelopes pretty well as they are. And this is very, very preliminary, very, very conceptual at this point in time. So there might be questions that you have that we just don't know yet. We wanted to, as mentioned, just kind of take the temperature of the Planning Commission and see if this has legs or not. So there would be some improvements to the parking lot. The footprints would remain, as I said, but then they would be built out where there would be a pizza place here in the front building. We're not sure exactly what would be in the building that's to the northeast. And then the main building would have a food court, if you will, and then also a sushi bar would have their, a training kitchen would be in there. So this area all through here would be sushi bar. And then this area here would be a food court. So the owners hired H2G to do the design work. They do these types of projects all over the country. And they're doing a great job, and they master planned this so that there is seating kind of scattered throughout, a nice outdoor dining space. And then, you know, things may flow over to the other building to the east. We're not sure yet, but we're still working through a lot of those details. So, you guys want to see anything?
I'm Tom Violante. I own Holiday Market, Patrick Van Lin, Sushi Bar. We owned Sushi Bar together, and we created it, started in my grocery store, and it started working in other grocery stores. Now we have 120 grocery stores throughout America. And we were looking for a headquarters, and we came across this building, and the building is way too big for what our use is, but the building is amazing. And we sat and we collaborated, and we said, this could be an amazing food court. There's challenges with the food court. One is the parking. We'll talk about the parking for sure. But what we thought with the quality food and being a community-oriented person in the business that I developed with my family, and Patrick's expertise in managing food booths, together we have a management team that will make this work and be a great community amenity and create just a draw to Ferndale, a draw to excitement. And we just think it's an amazing project.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone here in the audience who had questions or comments on this project this evening? All right. Well, welcome. I'm going to see if our commissioners have questions. Who wants to kick us off with questions for the applicant or for our city staff?
Through the chair. Parking requirements.
Talk to us about parking. It's our favorite subject.
So
this
is the reason
Royal Oak too.
This is a destination. It's not like our downtown where we have parking lots and.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we wanted to create a destination, so we started off as a discussion. We've had preliminary talks with our neighbors, but if you guys think that this is an amazing idea, but if you solve these requirements, we're like, how can we help you? We're going to find the parking with our neighbors. There's, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. This is the most likely approach we're going to come back with. Is the least busy we are in the food hall. Also, our business of Sushi Bar and the work there is also during that same time. So our plan would be to trick or treat our neighbors to get enough parking around us. The few conversations we've had, they've liked having food options and the excitement into that industrial zone.
Okay.
Sorry, I'd actually like to step back before looking at specifics and really talk about the use and whether or not the use would be appropriate in the area. Having worked on city staff years ago and through master plan updates and whatnot, conversations I've had were that we want to maintain the industrial district as an industrial district, and that we're that the market is tight for industrial space. However, some of these conversations are a bit old. I don't know what the present day market for industrial space is. But to me, it sounds like potentially I mean, with the 3 buildings and what you were looking at, maybe there's potential that you would actually utilize the smaller buildings for this type of use that would be, retail oriented, and then potentially market the bigger building to something that would be more industrial related. I just think that the district, I think that the concept is great, that you're having this regional hub, that you have this space, and that they're, especially with, if there is, the workers, employees nearby during the day that could utilize such a food hall, it sounds like a great concept. However, this is not an area that has been designed for that type of use. I would say that it's somewhat lacking in its, and not that it can be developed, but it's not how we've designed the district, and that the future land use has been identified as maintaining an industrial area, and so that would be my primary concern.
Commissioner Showalter?
And speaking for the M1 district, the M1 district isn't meant for pedestrian foot traffic. It just isn't built for that. And this is a building, like, I love the concept, I love the design, it's a great concept, but there's no way for people to walk to there without walking in the street and potentially dodging semi-trucks or whatever is coming through the industrial district. It's just not a district that's built for pedestrian access. And that would really worry me, even though I won't be able, it would, I just don't think it's the right zone for this project.
Yeah, I share Matt's concern about pedestrian circulation. So as a planning commission, we went out a couple years ago. I feel like we lost 2 years to the pandemic, so it's been like 4 years ago.
Right, no, I hear you.
And we actually walked it. So we had a couple of marijuana retail businesses that were coming. We had the reuse that was happening in the big building where Urban Rest is, where you've got a number of small manufacturing things that are together in one building. And so we walked this district. We went in a couple of different manufacturing facilities, and we saw the opportunity for this evolution, if you will, toward retail accessory to manufacturing. So it kind of started in downtown a little bit, like Valentine Vodka was one of our first, when he was still really small and like finishing in downtown. So it was kind of our first, we made that an MX so he could have his retail accessory to his manufacturing. And now in the M1, there is this evolution happening, but at the same time, it's still a really viable industrial district, right? So we as a commission had a lot of conversations about how to balance the evolution of that district. It doesn't have sidewalks. We walked in the road. We walked through that district in the winter. We walked through the slush. We walked through everything. It doesn't have good lighting. It doesn't have the retail district amenities that would keep people safe, if they're parking a block away or 2 blocks away in these shared parking facilities. So retail as an accessory to industrial manufacturing, we wrote it into the ordinance. It's where we're going. It's kind of how things are evolving. But this is definitely not an accessory. I mean, the primary use here is food hall. So I was wondering if you're thinking about a PUD, you'd mentioned it, Jason, how do you see this satisfying PUD requirements? Because I read through them and I was like, I'm not sure how you get to a
Before
PUD.
you get technical, because no, but I agree with your comments that one is that this would be a destination.
Yeah.
Also, food halls are going in major cities throughout America.
Yep.
And we see this as a destination, drive Uber, and people driving in from Metro Detroit coming here to Ferndale to our food hall.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, hey, don't want to walk there. This is not a walking thing. This is a destination to bring people over into this area. And in the industrial parks is where it's cool. That's where they are.
I've been to big breweries that have accessory outdoor uses in Texas and other places. Like I haven't seen exactly this. This is really cool. It makes me think of Grand Rapids Downtown Market, actually. But I get it. I get the reuse. But this is a fantastic and super well-maintained industrial space in a really viable, evolving small industrial district. Like, it would be tough for me to say that a higher and better use than industrial exists for this building. Like,
I think the main issue too is the fact that you're not along Woodward Heights, you're not along Hilton, you went right in the middle.
Yeah, urban
So
rest has
it's,
pedestrian access.
so it's almost like kind of similar to our conversation that we had about someone who wanted to change commercial to residential because it met the market better. It's like, but you're in a commercial strip.
Right.
So you're changing the use, and so it may be beneficial for you, but then the industrial uses around there, does that impact their values? Does that impact the viability of their businesses? It's not really a harmonious use of space. It's more of just you're changing the game and changing it up compared to what's there. I mean,
it would take a lot for me to consider this as a.
like, I think if you had street frontage on Woodward Heights or on Hilton, it would be a totally different story. But you're right in the middle of the industrial zone, changing the zoning.
Sure, I guess just addressing the PUD, it just says commercial uses that provide services to businesses and employees in the immediate area, such as.
Yep.
So it's not saying that it's an accessory, it's saying that it's providing services. So that's why, based on reading this, it seems like it would fit.
But looking at our PUD approval requirements, and there's like 9 qualifying conditions, I think, 12 maybe, and you don't have to meet all of them, but you need to meet a good number of them. When it comes to preservation of significant natural features, complementary mixture of uses, sustainable building and site design, open space and greenways, like there's all these sort of city priorities that are built into qualifying for a PUD. Maybe a case could be made for the underlying use. I still don't think it fits with, and I get, we can agree to have different interpretations of the future land use map or intent, Jason, but I think it's a stretch to see a primary commercial or restaurant use as meeting the intent of the underlying zoning district. Like I said, we'll agree to disagree, but that would be my interpretation. Is that it would be a real stretch, and to have, I mean, there's like seating for hundreds of people. I mean, this is like big, right? So to have
Correct, yeah.
all of these people needing to navigate to this site potentially in the dark, right? Because they're coming for evening and outdoors and fun and Cinco de Mayo and whatever, right? With no sidewalks and minimal street lighting, and just kind of the infrastructure that exists there doesn't support that.
So if there was, I'm just curious, just so I'm kind of following you.
Yeah.
So if there's like, say, a food component that was an accessory to maybe it's like maybe it is that training kitchen, right? Where people are training there, but then there's a food component that people can enjoy, food that people are making. Is that getting more in line with what your interpretation is of all this?
And I could maybe see that working in the smaller buildings. I think this building's just so big, like you would end up needing to have like a really large portion of it taken up by food manufacturing in order for anything else to be considered accessory.
And if I may, just because this is a discussion, and I haven't even discussed this with the applicant yet, so I'm just throwing an idea for consideration based on what Jason said. I can tell you there is a significant demand in this city for commercial kitchen space. I mean, we got to the point where we got a grant from MML to try to like create one of these. Cold storage, so refrigerated storage.
Yeah, farm field table had to move.
Storage that you can separate meat from not meat. To streamline FDA inspections. I mean, we've talked to some of these businesses over my last 5 years here. And so, I mean, I don't want to put you all on the spot, but if the direction that staff is hearing from commission is, because I remember the M1 conversations as well, and I remember some of the quips of the businesses saying that, Subway and Little Caesars are cool, but we'd like to have a little bit more to eat. And so if this could provide that, but the vast majority of it be this sort of food kitchen, food production that could essentially be leased out to other businesses, rented out. I know of one other building in town, way smaller than this, that's actually experimenting with that. But at the risk of being long-winded, I will tell you the research that the city did was even the commercial kitchen at Eastern Market, the lesson we learned from them was the kitchen was too small and the fridge was way too small. And so when I'm hearing we need more production, this building's really huge, I'm sensing an opportunity. So, I mean, again, I haven't talked with the applicant about that. They may think that's the worst idea ever, doesn't pencil, et cetera. But in terms of they have an asset, they want to use it and provide this vision, would you consider that type of arrangement as within sort of that primacy of industrial with accessory?
Let me see, it looks like Commissioner Hosky, did you have something?
Yeah, for me, it's about intention, right? I think the intention of the space, as you stated, is that it's intended to be a destination and not necessarily primary purpose to be like value add food production with ancillary retail, right? Which is the intention, or to be like hospitality use for the surrounding workforce that are in the industrial park, right? Like,
on the food hall part, I mean, this is a 2-story building. There's a lot of things going on here.
Yeah.
Sushi Kabar headquarters. There's our warehousing and things like that. There's a component of it. But we were in the intention part. We were talking about the food hall space, which was going to be a destination.
Yeah, and I want it to be. I would go to that, right? I think it's about intention and location. So if you were to pivot your vision, which I don't know is that it's our intent to ask of you, then to something that's food prep, value add space, commercial kitchen incubator space, right? That changes your vision, but it better aligns with the intention of this district. I think to Commissioner Hagforth's comments, you know, I see the vision of the industrial space that's being used for hospitality use and having these small spaces for each of the different food vendors and having this big open concept, right? I think having that located in the heart of the manufacturing district where there isn't the infrastructure to really support the visitors that are going to be coming to this destination is what the challenge is. And so if there were if this were to be located on one of like the peripheral streets that are a connection between the higher density manufacturing and a traditional commercial district like Drift or others that do have some of that infrastructure, I think that there would be more willingness to support that because the concept is incredible. So I guess those are sort of the two lanes that I'm kind of hearing through this conversation as a complete pivot of your vision, which I don't want to ask of you, but that better aligns with the intention of the zoning district or consideration of other properties that may be a bit more accessible to some of the infrastructure necessary for this to be successful.
I would,
Through the chair. Hold on one sec, sorry. Commissioner Brazen and then Commissioner Foster.
Through the chair. As a commissioner, I echo and support everything that everyone has said. That aside, I'm a little biased. I live right across the street.
It's your neighborhood, man.
I have walked these streets. I have crossed the street to go to Urban Rust and Drifter Coffee and wander down. It's not as scary as it may seem. It does need improvement, though. As a resident, speaking strictly just not as a commissioner, I do think it's a function that is needed in that area. You're right, like to your point, subway and doesn't cut it. It's absolutely a place there were pathways, crosswalks installed recently. There's bike rental right in front of Urban Rest. Like there's a lot of things that are creeping over into the M1. So as a commissioner, whatever our intent is with that district, it definitely is morphing. And so either I do support the idea that yes, the intention of the ordinance is that it is an accessory piece of a different function. As a resident, I'd go there. Like I'd be walking across the street through parking lot, whatever. Anyway, just because.
I'd park at your house and go.
Right? Yeah, like you can all come over and we'll all wander across anyway. So.
Thanks, Commissioner Foster, and then Commissioner Foster.
yeah, it's getting late. It was mentioned, Jason, sorry, I blanked on your name, that regarding the master plan and also just how we have been incorporating and wanting to incorporate other uses. into the district. So I just pulled up our master plan, and so the verbiage is that we protect and support the industrial subdistrict to allow new uses while preserving its functionality and character. And so I think that's really what we're getting at here, is that the main intent is to protect the industrial subdistrict, but then to support some new character, some new uses, because they might be needed. And it specifically states residential. This is not a residential use, but, and it doesn't actually talk to, other uses, but, I think we've all identified that there is a need for, some added restaurants or other potentially like retail use. But we also then identify in our zoning ordinance that like an accessory use, which we would be talking about here, is we would want a primary use as industrial. We talk about accessory use as 5,000 square feet. So, we're looking at very like accessory use. So I think we really would, that's the intent and how we're supporting the intent of the master plan in the zoning ordinance. So we'd really, I know that we would be looking to potentially use a PUD to get around that, but we would, I think, be really hard to find support for something so drastic as to converting this, entire square, or not entire, I know that there's other uses, but the majority of it to a retail use.
Commissioner Shalter?
Yeah, and it's, and if similar projects ended up moving forward, there would need to be, I think, significant capital investment from the city to provide continuous sidewalks, to provide street lights, to provide safety, because we can say that we want people to Uber in here as much as we want, but people will be walking in an unsafe area to walk. Because it's not meant for, there's no sidewalks, people will be walking in the street in an area that's not well lit. Someone could get hit by a car coming and going from this. It's just not a safe location for this.
And along that note, if I may, it's also like one of the things, just looking at your plan that you've created, you haven't addressed anything with sidewalks. So in all, the three buildings are still very separate with no ADA connectivity amongst them. So if I was in a wheelchair, I would have to go through a driveway or a parking lot, but.
Yeah, we're just.
Yeah, I know it's a new, but that's already, like, that's kind of what we're getting at. Even already, the project doesn't propose that. So pedestrian safety, it would be a huge ample necessary.
Through the chair, does your vision include alcohol?
Yes.
Okay, I can't support that.
I want to. I want
yeah.
to go to it. I just, as a commissioner, feel an obligation to find the best location for the.
What are the questions of you guys? We just kind of hit you with a bunch of opinions.
No, I got it.
Yeah, and Jason's been here for discussions before, so I want to make sure that it's a back and forth. So, send us more questions or pushback or.
Well, you gave us a lot to work with, and we're going to take all that in advisement. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I just want to make another comment. Like, I appreciate that this concept is contingent on a lot of square footage, which is limited in the city of Ferndale, which is limited in a lot of the surrounding communities, which is probably a big part of the reason why you landed in the M1 district to begin with. So I acknowledge that, I appreciate it, and that, I hope that we can, whether it may not be this property, if there's others, because, we do look forward to the use.
Got it. All right, thank you.
And like we said, if this were on a primary street like a Wanda, or if this were on a Hilton, or if this had immediate pedestrian access, it would be a completely different story as well. Even if it was an M1 or M2 or one of those districts, that would completely change the discussion.
So, to be fair, I would piggyback off of that. It wouldn't completely change the story for me. It would certainly support more of a retail use. However, we still have the duty of the master plan and the zoning ordinance and our future land use map that this is an industrial district, and we have an intention for that district, and that intention is for industrial uses with supporting retail and housing uses.
Through the chair, if I may, just from a staff perspective, in terms of giving sort of some guidance to the applicant, in terms of, obviously a lot of ground covered here today, and they're going to have a decision to think about, if and how they want to go forward. If a PUD is a vehicle that they choose to pursue, I'm hearing possible deviations being the square footage used for the accessory use. I'm also hearing possible PUD, public benefit, would be pedestrian infrastructure. If, perhaps as they're kind of, you would obviously connect with staff and kind of debrief, and that's typically how these kind of things go, and they can decide if they want to move forward. Would it be appropriate for them to perhaps come back for another discussion with maybe a first crack at a PUD application to kind of further dive into what that might look like? Or do you think, I guess, and maybe it's a heavy question, do you sort of see there may be a path forward through some deviations that might allow this to fit via the PUD vehicle, or do you think this may be too drastic of a deviation?
So there's always a pre-meeting required for a PUD, so there always would be at least one pre-conversation before any action was taken. But I guess I'll just kind of take a straw poll. I'll ask two questions. One, as it stands, would you think that this could come back as a PUD and get your support? Anyone?
Through the chair, I agree with everything that was put on the table, so I was kind of, I do not. I think the way the PUD is written and the intent, it's separate. So it either comes in as something that doesn't support directly support how many people are grabbing lunch there, what they need. Because we also have a commercial corridor right at the edge of this. So I'm always cognizant of that. I know it can't pick up tons of business, but maybe it's the right balance. So if this were a PUD, would it support that area? In my mind, not likely. But if they were looking to really do the development, then I think they should do it under the underlying district. So if it's going to be a commercial kitchen or production, then it should come in meeting those requirements for the district that it's in.
If this came back with more of a commercial kitchen or production space or focus, would there be interested in seeing that PUD?
Yes, with the exception that if they are going to serve alcohol, then the alcohol has to be produced on the site. So it's winemakers that would then offer their wine for sale, or spirit makers that would offer their spirits for sale, but not, this shouldn't have to then compete with the bars and restaurants in the community.
Okay. Other feelings on if this were reworked to focus more on a manufacturing?
If this was production with like an ancillary retail use, it'd be a completely different conversation, but I also need to be respectful of, that changes the business model and the business position. That's a leap that, obviously we're not in a position to make.
And if I were to see this come back, if you wanted to try to continue moving forward with a similar vision, I would want to see like market reports showing that there was no other industrial users that were interested, something along some market support that's showing that this is not actually taking very high demand industrial space off the market.
Other comments on if there was a reworked? I don't want to be overly encouraging. That's sort of the thing, is I know it takes a lot of time and investment and money to bring these things to the
clear.
plate.
Got the directive.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would love to have a festival food hall, but man, you give me something so cool. And then...
Festival food, like elephant ears and that kind of festival food hall?
No, like the corner of 9 and Woodward.
Banquet halls are special.
It's like the Rust Belt Market with food.
Okay, gotcha.
Rust Belt Market with food, right?
I'm actually really excited to get elephant ears this weekend in Dearborn at Firehouse.
Okay.
I think what would be great is like
We're
in
almost there.
Philadelphia, that market that they have.
Or in Boston too. Boston has a really great.
Yeah,
downtown food area.
you can get everything in there, but it's like a deli kind of place.
All right, we're going to bring it back.
Okay, sorry.
All right, we're going to bring it back. Sorry, that was my fault. I started that. We have now an administrative item. I believe we want to make a change to item number 3A, consideration of the minutes. Commissioner Foster?
To reconsider the motion.
Yeah, I have a motion to reconsider. the motion of 3A, the consideration of the minutes from January 19th.
So you have a motion to reconsider the acceptance of the minutes? All right, is there a second?
Second.
So discussion for everyone to understand why I want to reconsider is that, that I mistakenly moved to approve. Before noticing that in my notes, I actually wanted to make some changes. And I don't think I have the changes for this evening to make any, I don't think at this moment I should be making those changes, but then maybe we should table rather the minutes because there is a significant edit I wanted to make to the PUD approval, which would affect the language that City Council would see when they take up the PUD approval.
Oh, but we're not going to be back before then.
No, but I think I could provide it to city staff, who can then direct it to the City Council of a draft that would not be then approved. Would that work, City Clerk, through the chair?
Yes, we would be wanting to do that as two motions. So the first motion
Right.
under the acceptance of the minutes, and then the second motion
Right, so through the chair, just to clarify, the city clerk, that if we had draft meeting minutes for our PUD approval at the time that it went to the city council for approval, that would be okay?
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. This is a motion to reconsider acceptance of the minutes from January 19th, 2022. Motion was made by Commissioner Foster with a second by Commissioner Showalter. All in favor of reconsidering acceptance of the minutes? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Thank you. Is there another motion that you'd like to make to table?
So to reconsider,
No, you need to make a motion to table now, right?
oh, right, yeah. So I would move to table the consideration of the minutes from the January 19th.
Second.
Thank you. That is a motion from Commissioner Foster with a second from Commissioner Brazen to table the acceptance of the minutes from January 19th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Thank you very much.
Sorry about that, guys.
We are going to come back with a Plan Ferndale update in March that Commissioner Foster is working on with our city staff. So really the only other item today is our commission item.
I just actually had another administrative. Oh, wait, sorry, that's it.
Do we have another administrative item?
I'm not administrative. What am I thinking? It's so late. I'm sorry.
Good work here, man. All right. So our commission item, were there any other administrative items? Actually, I should ask Kyle probably. Okay. No, you're good. You were ready. So then typically our election of officers is done either in December or January, I don't remember when, for the calendar year, but we haven't yet elected our new officers for January, for calendar year 22. So tonight we will have our election for chair, vice chair, and zoning board liaison for calendar year 2022. We will accept nominations. You can nominate yourself. Someone else can nominate you. We'll start with nomination for the chair of the Planning Commission. I nominate Commissioner Michelle Foster to be the chair of the Planning Commission. She is the current vice chair. She is also our liaison to master land use planning. I feel that those two things really position her well to finish up master land use planning and then move into zoning updates that will necessarily follow the master land use planning. It'll be nice continuity, which is why I nominate Michelle.
I second.
Thank you. Do you accept
I
the nomination? I didn't make a note as to who nominated. All right, so there's a nomination on the table for Michelle Foster to be chair of the Planning Commission, nominated by Chair Baker with a second from Councilmember Pollica. Are there other nominations for Planning Commission chair? Don't everybody jump up at once. All right, all in favor of Michelle Foster as your new Planning Commission chair?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anyone abstaining? Congratulations, Michelle.
Thank you.
super excited.
No one else has to make all the motions.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to say. I don't get how to make motions.
I think I'm voting no for that reason.
It's easier to keep notes, though. So we would then be looking for a nomination for vice chair of the planning commission. Your duties mainly include running the meeting when the chair is not available. For the last year, I think, maybe a little longer, the vice chair has been joining the chair in the weekly pre-meeting with our city staff. We meet on the Tuesday before the commission meeting for an hour to go over the agenda, any questions, make sure that we're going to get the answers that our city staff need from things like discussion items, that type of thing. So any other duties of the vice chair I'm forgetting, Michelle?
I haven't had too much.
Is there anyone interested in being vice chair of the planning commission for the calendar year 2020?
Has Michelle previously served as vice chair?
She's been our vice chair for 2 years now, I believe.
Years.
Our pandemic vice chair. I'll start.
As liaison, I can't. I don't think I can.
You probably can't.
Yeah.
And Greg?
No, because
We nominate Greg, Marty?
if I'm booted out of office, then you've lost your.
I didn't boot it out anywhere. So. You just got reelected.
That's true.
Is there anyone interested in serving as vice chair of the planning commission for 2022? I'll just wait here. I'll be like a teacher.
I'll see if no one else will, but it's available to anybody, but if no one's going to blink before 10 o'clock, I'll.
You'll force the issue. Yeah. Commissioner Azar has been chair in the past, probably.
Unless you, okay.
Unless you want me to be, no.
Yeah, I mean,
Commissioner
yeah.
Showalter, I don't know.
It would be great if you were. Okay, I nominate you. Thank you.
Well, I second.
Oh, no, I'm not trying to nominate myself. That's the thing. I feel like this new generation of planning commissioners.
I nominate Chair Baker for vice chair for 2022.
And I second it.
Good. Boy, they.
Good.
You have to accept a nomination if you.
That's kind of what I was going to say. I am flattered. I'm about to become the chair of the Detroit Artist Market Board. So
Very cool.
Yeah, so part of this plan was that if I was going to be chairing there, I probably should chair vice chair. Are there other? I was also thinking about generational evolution, right? And I don't mean this in like an age way, but sort of length of term on the commission. You know, there's a couple of us who've been here for a long time. There are some newer members who are very active. So like I was thinking about also, building skill sets and new leadership and that sort of stuff too. But truly, if no one else wants to do it, I will do it.
I feel like I need another year before I take that on.
Do you have to be on for the full calendar year?
I don't think so.
Are you planning on going somewhere?
Well, I'm not going to move somewhere, but probably going to start a family in the next year, so I don't know if I'll be priority shifting at that point. So.
You could try it.
Commissioner Huskew is starting a family, and she's still here.
Well, but I won't be for several months.
She'll have some absences, yeah.
So that's why I'm being quiet over here. I have nothing to contribute at all, because I know I'll be gone.
I don't think that there's any reason that we couldn't reconsider it.
Hopefully in the next year.
If I nominated Commissioner Showalter, would you accept? No pressure.
I'd accept.
This is a friendly conversation. There's no pressure.
Yeah, so what are the requirements again?
You would run the meeting in the chair's absence.
Okay.
And I, as chair, typically meet with our city staff the Tuesday before the commission meeting to go over the agenda, any questions, kind of like you and I talked this morning about a question we had. So typically now Michelle and I meet together with the city staff at a time that works for everyone.
And I guess I actually didn't do that for a long time. It was more so.
I kind of recruited you in.
Yeah, so just.
As the vice chair. Yeah.
You wouldn't have to.
It's not a requirement.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll accept it.
All right, so we have 2 nominations on the table. Is there a second?
Someone has to second it.
I'll second Showalter's nomination. Right.
I don't think I can since I seconded someone else.
Okay, so we've got a nomination on the table for me from Commissioner Azar, thank you, and Councilmember Polika, thank you, and a nomination for Commissioner Showalter from me and Commissioner Foster. I'm going to decline my nomination. Thank you, you guys. I'm still on the commission, I'm not going anywhere. But,
They're not be leaving it.
I think from a succession planning standpoint, as much as I know.
it's time.
Get some new
It's time,
blood.
guys.
Well, if he ends up falling off because of starting the family, then by then I'll probably be more prepared for it. So that's your succession, yeah.
This is good. I like this. Is good conversation. All right, so we have a nomination on the table that's been accepted by Commissioner Showalter. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, thank you. Commissioner Showalter, congratulations. Our new vice chair. Thank you. There's also now liaison to the zoning board. Who's our current liaison to the zoning board? Michelle? And Greg has been on the zoning board in the past. Can you guys describe a little bit about what you see at the zoning board and how often you meet?
Well, when I was there, we
We're in
met
position.
a couple of times a year. It wasn't every month. And we always had very unique things that came to the table. They're very engaged. The people that are on the commission are very engaged. They, like we do, they talk a lot of things out. And the big thing is in my mind, it's always setting precedent. If the decision that you've been on, yeah.
I've attended those meetings.
Yeah.
Not on the board, I've attended them though.
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it, Matt probably wants this job.
How many times have we voted yes?
Pardon?
How many times have we voted yes?
Do they vote yes? Do they vote yes ever at the zoning board?
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
got one.
Oh, yeah.
Occasionally do.
I got one. I made the case.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
that I
They're
think
not
about
all
it, this is
no's.
something you're interested in, Matt. Is this something-
Because staff generally does a really good job of weeding things out and
About it.
saying, automatically this isn't going to work. Now, sometimes the applicant just ignores staff and says, well, I'm going to try it anyways. And then they're shocked that we denied them. But, I mean, there's a number of incidences that, I would say it was probably 50-50 of us agreeing with the request as opposed to denying it.
I was the BZA liaison for the past year, as vice chair. Vice chair, not BZA. And we met, I believe, like 2 to 4 times. But that actually leads me to a request of city staff. I believe annually we get a report. When is that done? The beginning of the year?
Report from zoning board?
Just of the previous year.
Yeah, some of the issues that came up in the BZA to see if we need to make changes to
The ordinance?
the ordinances.
When do we normally get that? Is it around this time or?
I don't remember.
Like, one thing was changing the
Yard setbacks.
from 3 to 5, back from 3 to 5.
I will look into the timing and through the chair, I'll make sure that we get that to you and we can gear up for the next one. But my memory's hazy on it, but I believe it was late summer, fall.
I kind of thought it might have been summer as well. Please, I just know there's changeover, so if you could make sure that, or try not to get it, lost in the shuffle there.
No, for sure. What we'll do through the chair is we will get it scheduled so that it's part of the transition planning. That'll feel pretty good to hand that one off, to be quite honest, but we will make sure that it is scheduled and it is delivered on time.
I do believe-
Former planning commissioner Ian Williamson is the chair of the zoning board. I know we all miss him. So if there's anyone who has a burning desire to work with Ian a couple times a year,
He runs a great meeting.
sure he does.
And I was just going to say that I believe there's training available if you request it through the city. There's often training through the Michigan Association of Planning that would help facilitate your education into ZBA, that if you're concerned about what that might look like. So.
What nights of the week do they normally?
Third Tuesday?
Third Tuesday.
How long are each of the meetings typically?
Shorter than ours.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes it's only a half hour.
Another reason I shouldn't be the chair anymore. Like, the tea leaves have been read, you guys. Got it.
I don't know, I feel like I'm now still on.
But no, you won't be, you should be chair.
Would Chair Baker be interested in being the liaison?
Oh my God, I think it'd be super fun. But I also, again, in the be interested in making sure that people get, new and different experience, or, we cultivate leadership. I've been doing this for 15 years, so I'm not going anywhere. But, okay, so, I don't know, Dustin,
Yeah.
Brittany,
Well,
Matt, anyone?
and because it is this third
If not, I'll do it. I think
Tuesday,
it's-
it'll be the day before. So they didn't meet last night, right?
No, they would meet next
Canceled.
week.
So it would be the night before. So you'd have meetings 2 days in a row. But, once a month.
We get 2 to 4 meetings last.
I can go hang
That
out
was
with
about
you.
the
Also,
average.
one other nice thing is that the BZA
Nominate me, that's
liaison
fine.
position is a
Alternate?
position, so you have to miss,
have to go
it's
to
not
everyone.
that big of a deal.
I can nominate myself to be the liaison for the zoning board of appeals. Brittany nominates me?
A second.
And you get to deal with signs. BZA handles signs.
That's the fun stuff.
I'm in. City council used to have to handle.
I know. Yes.
Well, all right, accept the nomination. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstaining? Thank you. Oh, I get to hang out with Ian. All right, I will totally do that for a year. I'll totally do that for a year, but I'm not doing it for 2 years. So someone else gets to have the fun in 2023. Any other commission items before we adjourn?
Yeah, one thing I've brought this up before in the past, and based on all our discussions on the M1 district, we really need to get marijuana stores out of M1, because those are high-use stores that have a decent amount of walking traffic. And based on all of our discussions, they do not belong in M1 or M2.
I mean, do they though? I feel like we had a there was feedback from the police department. The traffic and the frequency of visitors. I'd be shocked if there was like a high traffic count to any one.
Live.
Oh, they are.
Because they actually changed their route to be on the side street so it doesn't back up on Hilton.
For them.
Yeah. But yeah, the other ones, I mean, even the one in Hazel Park, that Hyatt, I see 3 cars in their parking lot.
And that's great, but it's going against the entire spirit of what the M1 is about.
You're right, from an intense standpoint.
And I don't think, we'll limit the amount of licenses, I don't think so, so like that way we can keep it out of CBD if we don't want, we can keep it in other mixed use 1 or 2, but it's just, doesn't belong in M1.
So the question, I think, is the timing then so we are going through a master plan process, and we have the intention of then updating our zoning ordinance following the adoption of our updated master plan once it is so approved, which is relatively a short time frame in terms of zoning ordinance amendments. So is this something that we think is, I don't think we're going to see too many new, since we have already all of our business licenses out for marijuana. So do you think that the timing of, general updates to the zoning ordinance would be a good time to make that amendment? Because I agree with the premise of what you're saying.
I think it would be. I think it needs to happen, so, you might even see somewhere like Gage or somewhere that is like maybe in Wanda, and they just find that like they're kind of like in a weird location and no one really goes by. They might decide that they would be better served in a different location as well. So I think that, and to reduce that kind of use in the M1 district makes sense.
I guess my only concern would be what would be the alternative then? What zone would it be allowed in then? Because we have to have some kind of opportunity.
Is any other location, right? Because in the zoning ordinance, they have to have a certain distance from one another. And if, again, going back to the last conversation we had, existing, which is obviously fluid and always changing to your point. Okay, but the city was fairly covered. There wasn't any locations available that was still within the buffer zones.
Of the M1 district, of the M1 and
Across
M2.
the city.
I thought it was just of the allowable locations within the M1 and M2, they couldn't go
Yeah,
anywhere
I think
within
the
those.
map blocked out, like, here's where they can't be, here's the buffers of where they currently are. And there really wasn't much, when we were debating, like, do we allow additional licenses, which was way out of our scope to begin with.
Yeah.
Like, well, how many more can we fit based on our zoning ordinance? And looking at the map, there really.
If we opened up the C2 or something, then that would highlight some new areas.
Yeah.
And
Circle.
I wouldn't be opposed to opening up C2, possibly mixed use 1 or 2 to allow, because I could see the Livernois corridor getting some use and to kind of rejuvenate get some traffic down the Livernois corridor. But it's, yeah, I just don't. I don't. For me, there's plenty of places where zones where it can go. In my mind, it shouldn't be regulated any different than alcohol, than liquor stores.
Or pharmacy, or.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe this is just my own ignorance.
Bars and pot shops?
Marijuana shops. But, and we want to get out before 10 o'clock.
Oh, I'm not in a.
9:47, my parking expires.
I have to pay for parking.
Yeah, you shouldn't pay
All right,
for
wait.
that.
Commissioner Husky.
No, for me, it's, so going back to the comment about, is it Live?
Yeah.
And then Green Buddha is just down the street. Both of those locations is a traffic issue. It's a traffic flow issue. And so I've noticed that the parking lots are empty, but their traffic is backed up on the street, and it's because there's a security guard at the entrance of the parking lot before you can even get into the parking lot. And so I don't know if that's an us rule, if it's a state of Michigan rule, if where that's coming from, that there's like these, and if that's a state of Michigan thing, or if that's an us rule and we want to keep it, then I think that changes the way I view site plans.
Yeah, and we can, and I think that whatever site, if we start to look at that, I mean, we'll be strict about which ones go, where they can go, but I mean, if they allow for a certain amount of queuing spaces, it might just, and when they come to us for a discussion item, we can be like, yeah, just allow for enough queuing spaces, because we don't.
Or is that a COVID thing? I just don't know where that's
I think
coming
it's a
from.
COVID thing, and they've just carried it
Yeah.
forward.
Because it technically is considered a drive-through,
Yeah,
which
that's
we don't
actually
really
good.
allow.
Yeah.
You know.
Which wasn't part of the site plan when we approved it.
No.
I think the city and the council have approved some temporary lessening or changes of regulations for COVID. And the last time I asked about Live, it was on the radar of the city administration, but like all of those allowances hadn't yet been lifted.
Green Buddha is kind of the same. Sorry, I live.
Are they driving? They're doing like a drive-through thing.
I haven't seen it.
Well, they usually don't stop you before you go into the lot. They stop you before you go into the store.
I have no idea.
No, I've usually just been directed when I've gone with someone who.
You're of age, Councilman. You don't.
Yes. It's legal.
Makes me embarrassed.
I don't inhale. But they generally just direct you into parking.
So is this, I think the suggestion that Commissioner Foster made was that this might be best addressed as part of a larger zoning ordinance update, or do you think it needs to be taken?
I don't think it's urgent.
No, I don't think it's urgent. I think it's
You don't wanna
something
lose
that's
it.
been bugging me for the
I'm gonna
past
lose it
2.5
from that
years.
list. Okay,
It needs to be taken care of.
yeah. Let's
it's
definitely not lose it from the list.
You know, all the licenses that have been approved by council have already been distributed. You know, there's going to be a new place that's on 9 Mile that they're going to be building, you know.
Well,
I just don't see the need to take action quickly, but I understand your concerns.
and Commissioner Foster mentioned, seeing market data around demand for industrial use. And I think that, I'm assuming, a good firm that's doing our master plan update, but I would be interested in all the usage just to make sure that, particularly as we look at retail, right? Like we have our central business district, we want to have like retail storefronts that line our CBD, but then the market has obviously changed. And so are we setting ourselves up for a higher vacancy rate? I'd just be interested in what that demand is for all uses to make sure that we're building to what's reasonable.
Agree.
And I think someone mentioned this about the size of the storefronts. I think just based on my own experience, I think across the board, you're gonna see smaller storefronts.
And that, like, galley style. This one, so long and.
Oh, yeah.
But I also really appreciate Showalter's comment about the safety because, yeah, if you have biking in the middle, that's not really gonna be very safe. So that point was well taken.
Other commission items?
Yeah, I just want to say, so in, speaking of the parking deck, I appreciate everyone's patience working through the conditions for that approval. I think having been city staff, knowing that it can be pretty difficult to kind of interpret the commission, especially after the fact and going on conditions. So I think it's specifically now a critical time to be quite specific, just with some changeover in staffing. But, you know, it is always important. So I just wanted to mention and say thank you for everyone's patience.
I've got my notes from Marnie. Have you still got yours?
I do.
Okay. Pardon? Oh.
For real?
Not just tonight.
I thought it was just because of tonight. I'm like, wow, that's harsh.
That was a joke, right?
Okay, so on that note, any other commission? Okay, we are adjourned at 9:36 p.m. Thank you very much. Please let us know when the mics are the mics on or off or. Are we done recording?
Marty, I'm not sure everybody really understands what you're saying.
Okay, I'm sorry, city clerk.
Hey, but like, I wouldn't, if they were, if like, were like delicately sprinkled throughout the city, because otherwise it looks like you're.
Wow! Is this your new house? Yeah.
Wow. Is that where Cheryl is?
No,
Yeah. I think so too, and I
Oh,
think
that's so cool. Congratulations.
Oh my gosh, when do you go?
Can we come visit? Everybody can come visit. Yes.
It's not hurricane season.
I don't have to pay for parking.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, so I was gonna give this to her. but I don't know if she can.
Whenever there's meetings.
I'll submit a pay request from the city. I mean about
Well, I realized that I had never responded.
$35 back. I've always paid over there. That's why I've been in some meetings where I'm like, yeah, you're welcome. I'm paying for the dock.
Realistically, I feel like.
So remember how we talked about
Yeah. Jordan got out of here
alternate
quick.
plan with the grass and ingress
Lawn
from the
lot, or is he just?
the other parking lot? And that
Such
is
small little lots. Yeah, they wouldn't be able to get the volume.
like they shall submit an
know.
alternate plan. And so it's like, oh, no, we can't have that. Because I don't want city council to think we have to, because I don't think that was the conversation, right? Okay.
Can you call Jordan?
Yeah, I'll work through that.
I'm sorry.
I'm very, thank you, Kate, for.
Yes, nice message. How long has it been?
Like,
I'm kid number 2, and she's still on the plane.
Grab my stuff and like, car.
And also, and we'll.
And then, like, literally, just as I like
I'm
rounded the
gonna
corner,
as soon as like.
Yeah.
and then I'm like,
I'm sorry,
I'm sitting
I'm
there like, I can bust through.
She's texting you.
I can just go.
Are you gonna lose quorum? What's going on?
And then like out of the darkness, I see
My
the
priorities.
slowest.
Of course.
Oh, no. We did stop at Christine's for some dinner, too.
Right, and I was like so right up on the track.
It's the best feeling when like you stop there and then Amtrak goes flying by. I'm like, thank God. Thank God it was Amtrak.
Yeah, so thank you.
Have a good night.
But it was like the train.
Oh.
But when I was like at critical.
So, and we'll see. I'm going to play it by ear, and maybe I'll be able to juggle both of them. But I need to.
It sounds like we're gonna get a new commissioner soon. So we're gonna have a new commissioner soon. So, like, we're in
what were their jobs?
Architect from Soroki, which would be
What's their name?
interesting. I don't remember his name. But not necessarily who we need right now. There was someone who was an environmental engineer. There was someone who, I don't know. And there was someone who was a planner.
Construction manager would be
Interesting.
interesting. I'm not sure though what they would. I wouldn't know what a construction manager would truly add though. They would be able to help with the constructability of things and be able to, but they,